We are live.
All right, we're live. Chair Booth, you can take it away.
Thank you, Andrea. Welcome, everyone, to our Standards and Assessment Committee meeting this morning. We're grateful to be in various locations, but we're all here with our best minds and hearts, and we're going to accomplish a lot this morning for Utah's children. Let's begin by recognizing that we do have a number of staff members that are going to be participating in our various agenda items today, and we welcome you. We also have live in the Utah State Board of Education office Vice Chair Jenny Earl. We have Emily Green joining us. We have Sarah Reel online, and I am online this morning from Spanish Fork. Do we have anyone? Oh, no, Emily is also online, it looks like.
Yeah.
Great. I can see her there. And we also have Deputy Superintendent Patty Norman, who is joining us online. So we're grateful for everyone being here, and we look forward to the agenda that we have before us. We're going to begin by a recognition of progress, achievements, and improvements in our standards and assessment area, and we will turn the time over now to Deputy Superintendent Patty Norman to tell us all of the good news.
Thank you, Chair Booth. Excited this morning because always to highlight the work of the board. So I'll start with my favorite part, which is this recognition of progress, achievements, or improvements, is that the Utah State Board of Education's mission is to open doors of opportunity for all Utah children through the vision of academic and organizational excellence in Utah education. So this month, we are going to highlight the work of the following area that deserves recognition and the achievements of the Career and Technical Education, Family and Consumer Science, and Micro-Credentials program. So before I read the wonderful things that they have done, I'm going to recognize the teachers. I'm going to let what this highlights is the amount of work that goes into these programs. So first, Lola Evans. So Lola, if you can give us a wave. She is our education specialist in these areas. And I'm going to tell you, here's some of the teachers that were involved in these efforts. So we had in sewing and textiles, Rachel Farmer, Colette Carter, Amelia Barber, Kelsey Bernards, Bridella Carter, Tenef Pot, is that how you say it? P-A-T-E?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Julie Bracken, Heidi Miller, Christine Heslop, and Susie Biazzo. And if we go on, that was just for sewing and textiles. So if we look at that, that collaboration, even across the state, what that looks like. We're also going to be recognizing the micro-credentials that the teachers worked on in the area of food and nutrition. And that was Jessica George, Tiffany Vogler, Lisa Jepson, Erin Halbosh, Sarah Kramer, Rebecca Sager, Tina Pott, Heidi Miller, Janae Hudman, and Christine Heslop. So as you can see, it takes really a village to be able to create the complexity within these micro-credentials. So in the Family and Consumer Science micro-credential itself, it was an effort to provide more flexibility in earning family and consumer science endorsements. So the FCS education specialist, Lola Evans, who waved earlier, and several of the teachers mentioned, and leaders in the Ogden, Davis, and Weber school districts have been developing stackable micro-credentials. These micro-credentials are opportunities for teachers to prove they have competencies in the different required areas needed to earn these endorsements. So teachers can now submit evidence of current knowledge into MIDAS for the selected micro-credential that they desire to earn a subject area, and a subject area teacher who helped develop and test their micro-credential will evaluate the evidence that is submitted. Once reviewed and passed, the teacher earns a micro-credential, which then can be applied to their endorsement as a competency proven and be able to pass that area off. The teacher then can continue to earn the micro-credentials that stack to complete the full requirement of that endorsement. So we'd like to recognize Lola Evans and her amazing team of FSC leaders who have put in many hours to develop and implement these stackable micro-credentials. Their hard work will lead to providing flexibility for teachers to be able to demonstrate their competencies as they enter education and become professionally endorsed. And all of this, I want to say, is through the work and decision-making of the board to be able to allow these flexibilities. And then that challenge, the staff took up that mantle, and to be able to say, then what does it look like? So this is one of those areas where you see your vision as a board come to fruition. And so Lola is available here if you have any questions for her.
Here's that our board member Reel has a question. Go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair Booth. This obviously is a fun recognition for me, as my mom is a CTE teacher with a fashion degree background. She went through the ARL to get her license and she teaches the foods and the fashion and all of the other CTEs at Churchill Junior High in Granite School District. And I just admire all of you. And I think this is such a great opportunity to add those micro credentials, but also admire you because I get to hear stories from my mom about students sewing their fingers. And I mean, I can't even tell you how frustrated I get putting the thread through is it called the bobbin? I hope my mom will never see this. So the bobbin and then through the needle. I mean, I get frustrated. So sitting there working with junior high or middle school students to do that, I just can't. But she tells me about their projects and all the things they make and how some of them get really into it and they come after school to sew or cook and do all of these really, really cool things. And I think that's just part of that, part of education where we're not just teaching math and English and science, but also life skills and things that they can take on further in their life. And I'm sure my mom wished I would have taken up a passion of either cooking or sewing, but alas, I did not. So anyways, congratulations and yeah, much applause. And thank you for putting in the hard work to do these micro credentials.
So I'm interested in terms of how many micro credentials would be earned in a year just across the state. How many teachers are taking advantage of this opportunity to participate and acquire these stackable credentials?
That is a broader question than I have the answer for, because we have so many opportunities in microcredentialing, not just with FCS or CTE. For me personally, in FCS, it has been a huge boost. I have people who are seamstresses, or they do the costuming at Eccles Theater, or they have all this experience and no way to prove that knowledge. And this gives them the ability to say, I have this knowledge. This is how I know how to do X, Y, Z, and I'm proving it with this microcredential, rather than going back to school and taking a course that they have way more knowledge in than just that course offers. So it's an opportunity for them to really prove what they already know and not have to go back to college and kind of jump through a hoop, if you will. So I have right now, and this is new to us, we're about a year into the food nutrition, and I have about 25 who have taken the opportunity to do that.
Excellent. That's great. Well, as a grandpa, I just have to report that my granddaughter, who attends Union Middle School, is her favorite class, without any question, is her foods and nutrition and her sewing. And I have been able to try out her various delicious offerings that she learned how to make in school. And she comes right home, and on Wednesdays when I teach her a piano lesson, I always get to try her muffin or her cupcake or the experiment, the amazing, they feel so confident because of the instruction they've received that they're actually experimenting and adding new ingredients to make it something very special that is uniquely my granddaughter. And I'm so thrilled that these programs are available at that particular age where they're just opening up their eyes to explore all of the possibilities around them. And it certainly makes for a much more interesting line of conversation. And I'll have to say the menu has been quite delightful. And she's succeeding very well. And thanks to those teachers that have gotten those micro credentials. So thank you, Lola Evans, and the team that makes that happen across the state for all of those teachers who would get those endorsements in line through this wonderful experience window that allows them then to extend greater opportunities to our students across the state of Utah. Thank you very much. It's great to recognize you.
Thank you.
And I think we'll get the certificate to you at a time when we're not virtual, but we're in the same place and location. So thank you so much for that report. And we are certainly grateful for the work that you're doing. Keep it up.
Thank you. I will.
All right. It's we have no public comment. Is that still the case, Andrea?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, good. So we're moving on then to action item 3.3. And this has to do with R277436, gang prevention and intervention programs in the schools. And we'll turn the time now to Elise, Tanya, and Kwong for the background information, and we'll get to work.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chair. So Elise Nui, Policy Advisor. This is a rule R277436. It's now being called the Juvenile Gang and Other Violent Crime Prevention and Intervention Grant. And the changes to this rule are really coming because of changes in legislation. So Representative Lisenby passed a juvenile justice bill, which changed some of the requirements for this particular grant and program. And so we wanted to incorporate all of that into the rule. Today, we are asking you, it was a little bit tough, so I appreciate your patience with me. We are on draft 3 for this rule. So you'll see changes both in black and white with underline and cross out, and then also in blue, red, green, and purple. So thank you so much for your understanding that this is a little tricky. Some of the changes that you'll see is a change in the name. So everywhere that it said just gang prevention, we changed it to juvenile gang to be more specific, and other violent crime, because it's not just gang intervention, but also crime. And then if you scroll down, let's see, around line 61 is the proposal that LEAs will turn in order to receive this grant. And so we included 4 specific things that they need to explain in order to receive the grant. So the first is, how are they going to identify the population they're trying to target? Once they identify the population, what kinds of activities are they going to do to address these particular issues? And then they need to show that they are collaborating not only with local law enforcement, but other community prevention partners. So what kind of things do they have in place to support the whole community? And then explain in detail how those funds will be used. So that's one of the changes. The other change just below that, starting on lines 84, that we wanted to also include protective factors. So make sure that we're not just keeping kids out of gang involvement, but that we're also building them up and supporting them so that they can be successful in schools in lots of ways. So those protective factors. And then based on those applications that we get, based on lines 90 through 93, staff will divide up the money to those that apply for the grant and then get that to them. So we have our experts here for questions. If you have any questions specifically about the program, if you have questions about the rule, I'm happy to take them.
All right, board members, do you have questions? Those of you in the room, if you want to just jump in, because I can't really see that well, if you do have questions or concerns.
Yeah, I just have a question around, we did put, so I'm looking at line 33 on draft 3. The LEA utilizes evidence-informed strategies that promote and increase protective factors in students within or without, with or outside of the school. So the question, I guess I kind of liked the list. I know that might be strange. And then specifically, right, self-management skills, citizenship, preparation for life skills, academic achievement, literacy, and interpersonal relationships. This cultural and social competence. I'm not always sure what that is. There's a lot of moving parts to that out there, but tell me, does protective factors, is that enough? Do we know what that is? And I know what some protective factors are, but does this really catch that?
Thank you, board member.
Yeah.
Tanya Albernoz, coordinator for prevention and student services. I think that it captures the majority of those, with maybe the exception of like the citizenship. Specifically, we have been engaged on the prevention team in an initiative to help LEAs understand protective factors, to help them understand the prevention approach of evidence-informed building up protective factors, what that means. So we have a lot of resources and technical assistance that we can provide to LEAs around this issue. And we wanted to leave it general too, to incorporate maybe new research and things that are coming out that is specific to gang prevention and violent crime prevention. There's a lot of activity at the national level, and now DHHS is forming a new violence prevention department to help implement these things. And so that's one of the reasons why we wanted to take out a lot of that specific language, is so we can incorporate new activities that are being found to be successful in this area, if that makes sense. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it answers my question. I wondered even if we could still reference some of those, because it would seem that those would be factors, and then if there's others, I guess we could be looking at that, but let's see.
We're open to it.
Yeah. I'm just thinking which something like may include, or which could be part of, these items could be part of. So let's see how you would word that. That the LEA utilize evidence-informed strategies that promote and increase protective factors, which may, something like that, which may include, and then kind of that list there. And then tell me, because I do think that sometimes there is a cultural component that could play into it, right?
Yes.
So how do we stay within cultures and not within cultures?
That's a very great question.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, Cohen, I'm a prevention specialist restart practice, and I'm here supporting Rita and taking the beat. So, so I'm just being out with the support on this. I think with the just to add in one, Tanya say on the protective factor on our website, we talk about concrete support, what the student needs. We talk about the knowledge the development in so all those part of the factor building up student skills so they can deal with the culture. So like when a student is at school, we try to give them that skill so that they can make a decisions based on the environment they're in, maybe in in terms of the culture, we can put it back. I think we need to understand some of that is within the family, how they are connected with gang related within that family. So we can we'll build that providing skill to the student, and then when they're in that situation, they may but make that decisions like, oh, I need help.
Better choices.
Better choice. So I have a trust school's counsel or someone I trust at the school that I can seek out and ask for help. So the protective factor provide that skill so that they can make decisions, because it's hard for us to go in the family to change that culture, right? But if we build a framework where students can build that skill and then they decide to encourage them to advocate for self-advocate to get help when it needs to rise.
Okay.
Just that.
Yeah. I appreciate that you touched on the protective factor phrase, because I scrolled up to see if we had a definition for like what that means, which, you know, I wonder if we might. I do like having that list, because I think that, you know, citizenship, preparation for life skills, academic achievement, literacy, the interpersonal relationships within or outside of school, I think those are just, they still hold a lot of relevance. So do I need to unstrike those?
Yeah, I think what I think, sorry.
Yeah.
Tanya Alvarno's coordinator for prevention. I think what might be a good thing to do is to end the sentence where it ends right now and then say protective factors may include, and then just unstrike that sentence. Does that make sense?
And then we wouldn't need required for school completion or full participate, right? You would just kind of say protective factors may include.
Yes.
Self-management, whatever.
Okay. Let's see. Let's get is someone driving the?
Yeah, Patty's driving. Patty, can you share the motion stock too? And so that we can see it in the room of what Elise has typed.
Yeah, I am trying to share it.
Me too.
Yeah, do you know what? It's just going right on top of it, I think. So when I'm pulling it over, you're not seeing it. So
No, we're not.
I will let someone else share.
Elise, do you want me to share or do you want to share?
No. I can share if you want to give me permission.
Oh. Jerry, let me share for now, and then Jerry, can you let everybody share? Carson, can you work on that?
I'm wondering, maybe instead of the cultural language that we put something in like parent involvement and monitoring, so that we're actually drawing it back to how can we support the home or the family, something like that, which would have to do with cultural a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's one thing that we have to keep in mind in this space particularly is that there could be generational involvement in games. And so, but I think it would still be helpful to put that in there.
Yeah, I'm just looking over, I'm kind of looking over youth.gov, some of their risk factors, protective factors, and that's the top one they have listed is the family involvement and monitoring. So, and I think that would fit into that cultural thing, because and this is just based off Jenny Earth's perception, so I could be wrong. Belle can tell me, you are the professionals, but if we can get families involved, right? And you're right, there could be a generational issue, but there may not be, right? There may be youth that are engaged in, So, okay, where are we at?
Does that look good to you, Jenny?
I don't know. I can't remember. Let's see yet. Let's see. It may include family support and monitoring, and social competence, self-management. Emily, how does that look there? I think that's pretty close. I don't think,
Let me see. It needs to be in B, doesn't.
Yeah, let me look back. Yeah, yes, it would be C. Do we need the in part required for school completion and full participation in society, or do we just need to indicate that we probably need to say something like protective factors may include right? Yeah. Yeah, and then just take off the end there. Okay, I think that's
That looks good.
Emily, do you have any other comments on that one or?
Other questions or other suggestions from board members?
Chair Booth,
Yes.
I just wanted to do a double check with Elise on this, about how it's numbered or lettered in this case. So on B, it mentions protective factors. I just need to know which comes first. So it says, if we were to kind of read down it, if it flows correctly. So that the LEA utilizes evidence-informed strategies, all of that is still there, correct? And increase protective factors in students. And then on C, and then it says protective factors may include. So is that, should that go in to a like small number 1 or I, or is that something different? I just didn't know technical wise.
Elise, you're muted.
That is a good question, is what I said.
And we can
Only,
come
I
back to
guess
it.
my-
Yeah, we can come back to that, but yeah.
Yeah, let me look
Let's
for a
take-
second and I'll figure it out.
That's technical, but there's only, if you did I, there's only one I. So
Right.
normally you don't do that unless you have a couple. Maybe it connects to the other sentence, or I do think C's fine. Maybe it would need some technical wording or look at it. That's just my 2 cents,
Yeah.
whatever it's worth.
Yeah, at the board's
think C is
direction.
correct,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
at the
I will
committee's
check with
direction, we
Amy.
can go back and do some technical things.
Yeah. Okay.
Good. All right. So if we have asked all the questions and gotten all the answers, are we ready for a
Yeah,
motion?
Randy, I do have one more question.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, just wondering how many, so are we seeing? Okay, so they're applying for the funding for this, right? All right. And where are we seeing that funding being used primarily? Is it primarily around the Wasatch Front? Yeah, are we seeing it at the bottom of the state, at the top at all? In other words, are there people that, like, for example, Iron County, right? Do they know that there's funding available if they're seeing gang activity there? Does that make sense?
Yeah, Tanya Alberto's coordinator. So yes, we release it statewide to all LEAs. And the thing about the new statute is that it's really clear that their application has to be based off of their data, the local data, including the number of kids who have been charged with these specific types of incidents, the number of incidents that have occurred on school and LEA properties. So their eligibility will depend on their data.
I see.
And so we have the data that we send out to them to let them look it over and decide if they want to apply for the
I
grant.
see. Okay. I was just wondering, do people that need it only live here? And I know that at the top and at the bottom of the state is still needed, right?
I wish I could answer that question for sure, but I can't right now until we
Okay.
see the data.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the strategy that we've taken so that as many
Can
As they have,
access it
yeah.
as they need. Okay, sounds good. All right, thanks, Randy. That's it.
Thank you. All right. I would entertain a motion.
I will make a motion. If I can see the motion document, I'm making a motion. We move out art, is it up on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, the motion is that the committee approves.
Oh, do we want to move the first one on the?
Oh, yeah. We probably do need to do that, Randy.
Okay. So the change that we just made, we need to approve that. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So does someone want to make it, or should we just say,
member Earl.
I did make it earlier, so it does, can you see the screen there, Randy, at C?
okay, all right. Oh, all
Okay,
right.
so
That the committee amend, we have a motion from member Earl that the committee amend draft 3 after line 37 to read as follows. Protective factors may include family support and monitoring, social competence, self-management skills, citizenship, preparation for life skills, academic achievement, literacy, and interpersonal relationship skills. So that's the motion. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Okay, now I'll make a motion that the committee approves R277436 draft 3 is amended on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading.
Thank you. We have a motion that the committee approves 277436 draft 3 as amended on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. All right, thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to work with you, Tanya, and your team, and appreciate your ongoing work in this critical area.
Thank you, Chair.
We're now going to move on to action item 3.4, which is R277475, patriotic civic and character education. This is the continuation. And, happy to have Elise once again, and Joanna and Robert help us set the stage for this work that we'll accomplish today.
Right. Thank you so much, Chair. So this is Rule R277475. It is called Patriotic, Civic, and Character Education. And this is coming before you today because it is up for its 5-year review. As a reminder, every 5 years we review rules. And so this one just needed to be reviewed in consultation with staff. We looked at this rule and looked at all the new legislation and things like that, and current practice in schools, and didn't see any changes that we felt needed to be made. We think it's a great rule that explains all of the frameworks that are available to schools for these programs, the patriotic, the civic, and character education, but still allows enough flexibility for that local control of how exactly that's rolled out. And so there are no changes that we are recommending today, but we have both Robert Austin and I believe Joanna Sorensen to answer questions if you have any. Thank you.
I have some recommendations, and I have some questions too, but we don't have a category listed on here. That's one. And number two, in the law, it actually indicates we will be doing periodic, let me read the actual law, periodic review of the content. And a local board can do that as well, but the state board has an obligation. I don't see anything in here that a mechanism for doing that or a frequency or anything like that. I'll pull it up so you can, well, you probably already know, we have Robert Austin. There you go. He's probably got it memorized inside of it. Yeah. So it's 53G10-302. It says that the state board and local school boards shall periodically review school curricula and activities to ensure that effective instruction in American history and government is taking place in the public schools. I don't see anything in here on that. So we probably need to put something in here. I don't know how frequently we monitor or, when we're doing that. So I don't know if someone has a feedback on that.
Yeah, board member Earl, this is Robert Austin, Humanities Coordinator at the state. Yeah, that's a great question. I think when we think about that in terms of the periodic review, thinking primarily about the instructional materials process where curricula are selected, but a more systematic review. I guess the question is just how specific this rule needs to be in terms of if it's referencing 302 or 304 or 204, if it's kind of a question about whether that statute is where we kind of define that process, or whether it needs to be more spelled out in the rule. That's really the question.
Well, we're definitely, yeah, good question. I mean, there's components of, I don't know, different pieces of the character civic character education. I'm actually, because we're you referencing the rule, referencing where it's at in the rule itself, the law in the rule itself. So it would seem that it would fall under this. And I'm sorry, I just didn't think of a good way to monitor. So I'm hoping for some expertise on that. Other things we're monitoring, every 5 years, maybe we're taking a sampling. There's a variety of ways to do that, but it clearly says that we need to not just on the front end, but we need to be aware, are the resources that districts are using, do they meet the expectations that are outlined in law? So.
Dr.
Member
Franz,
Earl, are you thinking, oh, sorry. Are you thinking more, it's like, or maybe Robert, you're thinking more, is it duplicative to have it there and in the other way, in the other pieces, other ways we have it in other rules? Or are you thinking that it is something that we need to have in the rule, or is it something that we're already doing and we don't necessarily need it in the rule?
please go ahead.
Board Member Reel, from my perspective, the question is whether the continuation of this rule, just how specific do we need? There are some things that are specifically mentioned in this rule. For example, the flag policy under 304, there are some aspects of the character education statute that are included in this rule, but not the entire statutory language, so that we don't duplicate what is already in statute. But the question about the implementation of some of the requirements, that's also a question about whether that fits in this rule or if there's some other policy that would get at that.
Okay, that's exactly what I was wondering. Just duplication and necessity is kind of what I'm trying to get at here.
But is it duplicated? Where is it done? And what does it look like? That's my question. Where is it duplicated and what does it look like? If we're duplicating it, I don't want to do that. But I argue I don't know where else this is sitting. And maybe I don't know. So that's common.
Those are great questions. Let's hear from Dr. Thronson.
Thank you, Committee Chair. Jennifer Thronson, Director of Teaching and Learning. I think for this one, current practice is Category 2. Category 2 is basically if we are given like a hotline tip or some kind of complaint, then staff looks into it. We do not consistently monitor this on a yearly or biannual basis. It really is based on complaints due to the other work demands. Now, if the board would like to have more oversight in this, we could increase the category, but currently it'd be a Category 2.
And that's kind of, I saw it between a 2 and a 3, and only because, and that's back to the question, it says that we're asked to periodically review, right? And specifically to address effective instruction in American history. So what if we're
doing more, what I would say, like informally. So when we're going out and doing professional learning, as we're developing the curricula with Jordan that the board approved, like those are resources that we'll put out there, and we'll have evidence of LEAs that are using those, adapting those, managing, that curriculum in some way. But it's not like a formal, just transparency. There's no formal process that we have executed over the 10 years I've been here in this space. It's been more, we hear people aren't teaching social studies, and so we reach out and get clarity, or we get complaints from the hotline around like this isn't being taught, or this is being taught incorrectly or inaccurately, or whatever those complaints might be. So this is a great discussion for the commission, the committee. What level do you want? Do you want a periodic review? And thinking about like in a teacher evaluation, it's only school districts, which is 41. We do 10% a year. And in this case, you'd be going beyond 41. You'd go to 168 or so LEAs. What's doable and what would that periodic review? We can figure that out. But if we want to put into here Category 3, where staff are required to review up to 10% a year, that's almost 20 LEAs. So just keep that in mind, and what we would be able to accomplish in that.
And I guess that's why I'm asking the question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we don't have anything. And we're just saying we're waiting for a complaint to come in and then we're going to, right? I don't think that's not.
Well,
to
you
me,
know,
that-
as not being the experts, Joanna or Robert, like, do you feel
Yeah,
like you
yeah.
have ways that we formally or informally do this besides just the like social studies director meetings and the conversations you have with people? I don't feel like we get to a category 3, because to me, category 3 is more formalized and there's a process orientation to it versus kind of an informal gathering of like, yeah, people are doing things and I have examples from different communities. I don't know that we have examples from every community of how they're engaging in social studies. So I would leave that to staff to, if you have examples, if they're like, yeah, we totally do this. I could be off base, but in my mind, we don't do this formally.
Yeah, this is Robert again. I mean, we have our annual state social studies conference and encourage pedagogical approaches, and we visit with schools across the state in terms of their lesson design and implementation. Much of this also relies on the local LEA ensuring that effective instruction is occurring, but we're certainly open to some kind of more formal review. The problem, as we know, with any language is when it says shall periodically review school curricula, it's like, well, what exactly does that look like? And
I think that that's the argument of a rule, right? That is that we put that, and that's why I'm asking the question, what do we want to put here so that we'll meet the criteria or standard? And I don't think it's a 1. I guess that's what I'm saying, is it's not a category 1, right? It clearly says in law we should be doing something. Periodically doesn't say, to me, it doesn't say everybody's curriculum every year, right? So maybe it's over 5 years or 6 years that we circulate through and just do whatever that is. That's why I'm kind of asking professionals. We haven't got Joanna speaking here, but
Well, Joanna Sorensen, pre-K through 6 social studies specialist. I was going to say, like, it's great when we hear what is or isn't being done, but I also feel like we're addressing this in a proactive manner with all of the professional learning that we're, extending to districts. They presented in here last meeting or 2 meetings ago about all the districts and schools and classrooms and even PLC teams that have invited me out to train on the new standards. And of course, in that training, all of this is embedded. So it's not formal, it's informal, like Jennifer was saying, but I don't feel like we're waiting for something to happen. We are proactively, trying to support teachers in this. Robert mentioned our leadership meetings that we have with LEA Social Studies Leaders Conference. We have the National Council for the Social Studies coming in 2029 to Salt Lake City. So that's exciting.
I have a question, I guess around this whole subject, and it might not be the place to what this rule does. So I'm gonna ask it to see if it does fall underneath that. So as far as reviews go, so if we have just less than a month ago became aware of the history teacher at a middle school in our district that is teaching that having children align whether they would stand with Thomas Jefferson or not because he was a slave owner. He was one of the main writers of the Declaration of Independence. So we have history being presented where they are being asked to take sides, and you're going to be pressured into stand in the one-sided of he was a slave owner without all of the context that surrounds that. And if you have that, then you have an entire school year of 8th graders that hate Thomas Jefferson, which means they don't support the Declaration of Independence because they haven't been trained properly in what this all looks like. So where does that fall? And we're talking 5 years of this type of lesson plans going to a local school district. And I would say that's a big problem. So what do? Where does that fall underneath our patriotic, civic, and character education? Where does that accountability go? How do we quality check those lessons? And I know we're going to say like local school districts, but if we have standards that fall here, what's our place?
Robert, do you want to
take that, Jennifer?
Yeah, this is Robert. It's really, I mean, it gets to the crux of any curricular area. It doesn't matter whether it's mathematics or science or language arts or social studies. The board's obligation is to create standards, and then we ensure that those standards are taught with fidelity. But it's a partnership. It's a partnership with parents and stakeholders. It's a partnership with schools. It's a partnership with professional learning. There's, the vast majority of teachers across the state are providing incredible social studies instruction, and we want to make sure we support that. We have an instructional materials process to make sure we align curricular materials to the standards. We provide funding for, in the elementary grades, the curriculum development that is being created through Jordan to really model that kind of instruction. And then there will be also always some poor instruction that occurs that needs to be remedied. So that's kind of the challenge of trying to figure out exactly what role do we play. And there's again a partnership that has to occur because we're all in this education together.
And I think, so I'm wondering if that's, does that fall under R277475-3 line, section 2, if I said that right? An LEA shall ensure an educator has responsibility for patriotic, civic, and character education taught in an integrated school curriculum, and in the regular course of schoolwork. How do you review that on a state level? Making sure that we don't have like a pocket of students that decry a respectfully half-delivered view of history and hate one of the main writers of our Declaration of Independence.
Deputy
May I
Superintendent,
respond on this one?
would you like to respond?
Yeah, we had Jennifer, I think, with her hand first, and then I can follow up after.
That would
Dr.
be great.
Thronson.
Dr. Thronson.
Thank you. I think for this one, what we need for the rule is, are we good with a category 2, which is basically we handle if intervention is needed. And if we're not, then category 3 and staff will determine what that looks like. What I could see, given that line that Board Member Green just referenced, is we would ask a percentage of the LEAs each year to submit to us how they ensure that our educators are attending to those things. And then if those written statements give us concern, we would ask for more questions, right? So basic level of monitoring is submit some kind of statement saying how you're ensuring that. And then we would review those and say, ooh, that doesn't seem sufficient. Let's go talk with them more in depth. And that would lead us to, and then that would be something that staff could do at a category 3. So it really depends on what the committee would like. As I was surprised when you said, oh, there's no category. And I was like, we just had a meeting last week or this week with staff saying every role needs a category. So I apologize that it did not get a category in there, and not on you and Joanna, Robert. It's just like, it's a new practice. And I think we're getting in that habit. It just, Board Member Earl and other committee members, what level would you like? And then we can figure out what that looks like. And I think those lines, line 28, 29 makes sense, as well as probably 26, 27, like, are they providing instruction for, and how are they ensuring? And we could ask some simple questions that they could be required to respond to. And so in the rule, we would just put category 3, and then staff can kind of figure out what that looks like.
To add on to that, Chair Booth,
Please.
I think going back to Member Earl's question, I think for me, it sounds like, based on the success that we've heard, that this is working well, and there are, there might be some anecdotal moments that Member Green was talking about. But for me, I would rather not overrule a rule. I'd rather keep it as it is and know that we are seeing success. We're covering everything that's in there. And we have other pieces of code or statute that covers the other pieces that may be missing. So my preference would be to just kind of keep it as it is and keep continuing the success that we've seen and the implementation that we've seen, as well as what Dr. Thronson was saying about that other piece. I think that's the part that maybe you were looking for that is included in our processes that may not be in the rule and I think doesn't need to be in the rule, but has that accountability piece. So my preference would be to just keep it as is and not I don't know how else to say it other than overrule the rule.
Well, the only problem is that there is no mechanism in here for measurement. So that, I mean, you're right, we've got our specialist and we can write that in the rule that this is how we're going to monitor it. But the argument is there isn't anything for periodic review. That's my question. And I'm sorry, I probably should have written something up. I didn't. And I don't see where that's taking place formally. And I'm not saying our professionals aren't doing some of that. That's not what I'm saying. We just don't have an exact, what is it we're going to do for that requirement, that periodic review, and what does that need to be? And I think that's the question that Dr. Thronson's asking, right? What do you want that to be? And I would argue higher than lower on the level scale, only because this is an area where we have seen, and I'm not suggesting it's not because of what we're doing here, it's because of a variety of other things. And that's, I think, why it was built into the law, is because they want a periodic review. And I say they as in legislators want a periodic review to know that the history is being taught in a way that is effective, right? That's effective instruction is what the terminology was. So.
Thank you, Dr. Thronson.
Yeah. Chair, if I may,
Please.
Just as a quick in between, and this may be helpful. If we look at the oversight framework, and I don't know if that's something that we can pull up really quick, because I think that's kind of the decision on this. When we look at the oversight framework, category 3, if you look down at the example, it's talking about requirements. USP, runs a funding program checking to ensure LAs are meeting requirements by using an application and assurances. So I was just checking with Assistant Superintendent Darren Nilsson about the assurance document, which the board has really been streamlining. And in order for it to go on the annual assurances document that an LEA says, yes, we are doing this, our schools are doing this, our teachers are doing this, it has to be in board rule. So if right now, if there's nothing that is like the checkup on that, the minimum expectation of this committee, or maybe what you're asking for, the minimum expectation is for it to be on the assurances document. Right now, the flag and the teaching of the pledge is on there. The flag is not on there. So there's different things that are or aren't on there. So to get to a level 3 would then put it on the assurances document, if I'm correct. Is that right, Elise? I just wanted to do a double check on that.
And I don't want it on the assurance document. I'm just going to say that right out. It's worthless. To me, it's worthless to have someone just do a checkbox. Yep. That's not what I think it's saying in code. It doesn't say that. It says a periodic review of school curricula and activities to ensure. It doesn't say an assurance that you might have purchased curriculum that could effectively teach, right? That's not what it's saying. So I think the assurance isn't enough, but I don't think a yearly monitoring of all of our schools is enough, right? I think what it's saying to me, and you guys can correct me if you think differently, it's saying that occasionally, periodically is the word we use, that staff actually say, okay, we're gonna 3 districts this spring, we'll let them know, we're just gonna come in, we'd like to see your curriculum, right? It's not, we're saying we're watching this, we're paying attention to it, but it's not like we're dedicating the whole year to it, because we already have all these great things going on that are proactive. But it is saying that we are periodically going to come in and we'd like to see what you're doing, right? That's what it's saying to me.
Yeah. So on the category, and Elise, I don't know if you have the oversight. I'm looking at the oversight framework framework.
I don't think it's a 4 either.
Yeah, but if we look between 2 and 3, category 2 says USB is not overseeing the required implementation, but may provide technical assistance and respond. 3 says USB provides minimal, less frequent than annual. So if it's yearly, if it's once a year, I think it's minimal. So I think a 3 is what you're saying.
It is, and that's why I think
Okay.
in this code for our staff members, we need to articulate once every 6 years, what's going to happen, right? I'm not expecting every year, right? But we know that you could be expected, we may ask you to be accountable, right? That's what we're saying. And we're gonna come do a site visit, and you could share. How that works, I don't know. I don't know how that works, or people don't like that, but that still is what I think it's saying.
Love us.
I know they love you guys, but I think that's what it's saying to me. It's not saying, can you just mark something and tell us you're doing it? Right? It's
So
saying we'd
that
like to
would be a
see.
3. Then that would be
Okay.
a 3.
So category 3, and then how do we want to write that up is the question, because I think it needs to be clearly articulated in law. What does it say there?
If we refer to it as the category 3 then does go back to that which does require, have that in there. In our, yeah. Is that correct? I'm just making sure, Elise.
Yes,
that
I'm
it's
just looking
okay.
at it as well. It's a less frequent
Yeah.
than annual desk monitoring is sufficient for the requirements.
So yeah, so if we say it's category 3, we can definitely put something in the rule that explains that. However, we don't have to. We could just say it's a category 3, and that is clear to everybody what the expectation is. And then as staff, since this is kind of a new thing and a new idea, they can develop procedures and policies within their own section that outline what that looks like. And then that way it's a little easier to change if they decide, oh, wait, this is actually not monitoring the way we want to, or this is not living up to the category 3. And they can make those changes much more nimbly. But either way, it's fine.
And maybe what we can do in the future is for every rule that we're assigning a category to, which will be all of them moving forward, we include that oversight framework category. I call it the cheat sheet, the table that you can just quickly look and say what that is. And so that might be helpful as
That
well.
would be helpful.
Okay, so from
I
now
do
on,
think,
yeah,
I think we ought to list out at least the time frame that there is some kind of a review. And then I do agree. I think our professionals can decide exactly what that entails, but I think giving a time frame, right, category 3 and a time frame, they'll be, we do it on other things, and I'm not thinking of a rule right offhand, but on other things we've said within these 10 years, or I don't think it's 10 years though, right? 5 to 6 years, you could be monitored, right? That's what the idea is. And then they can develop what that rubric looks like. I don't think we have to do that, but I don't think it's not anything, right? It's not marking an assurance. It's not saying, oh, well, we saw that they held a singing course, whatever, with patriotic music, so therefore they must be doing this. I think it's a little bit more than that too, just the visual, so.
Well, it states specifically that it's review school curricula and activities.
Yeah.
Of which, the one I just gave is both curricula and activities, like a physical activity that's done. So it's, if we put shall periodically review school curricula and activities on a blank year rotation.
So my question is, how do we not let what board member Green is reporting, how do we not let that just slip by and keep going on for a number of years? How do we train and assist local curricular leaders and parents to deal at the local level with something that until board member Green brings it to our attention, we don't know is going on, and it could be going on in lots of different pockets and corners of the state. How can we get local leadership to address those issues and solve the problems so that we don't have kids growing up with a generation without the information that we need, because we can't monitor that from above always and be aware of what's going on and keep things moving well. Any ideas, Robert?
Thank you. I just want to say that from my perspective, it will be wonderful to be able to catch teachers in the act of doing great things. And that's going to be the perspective we're going to be looking at is assets. And it will be a great opportunity to help teachers celebrate the Constitution Bowls and the assemblies and the deep, thoughtful instruction that is occurring. So I see this as a great way to help us bring that feedback loop back to you so you're aware of what's going on.
Thank you. Did you have another comment? I didn't mean to just take over what you intended to say when you raised your hand.
No, that's exactly what I wanted to say. So thank you.
Okay. Great.
And can I make a suggestion? Yeah. Could you just add a subsection 6 now and just put monitoring, and then you come up with your language there and put it there? Yeah. So that you can put your what you're hoping for there, and it will give you some concrete way to solve this.
Would it, sorry, extra question.
Please, go ahead.
Adding on to that, Michelle, do you think it could go in, I was looking at subsection 3 and just adding a 3 that the LEA shall provide and LEA shall provide, and then the superintendent will review on a rolling basis kind of line?
Yes, either way.
Okay. Okay. So either way is fine. Okay. Thank you.
And if I just real quick, because I want, yes, I like this. I want to circle back and real quick though, I want to catch teachers in the act of doing great things too. But I don't know that we answered Member Booth respectfully his question when things are on a 5-year, in my awareness that this is happening. And we've got all our people here. So I wouldn't mind a deep dive on when, and I'm not gonna air the laundry list here. I can do that later, but if we were to isolate it on this one specific example, what's done here? Like what does that do? What can we do? If we were to create this monitoring subsection 6, and we see that there are things that contradict, 53G 10302 and our rule and such. What works for you? Like what's that level of engagement that's appropriate and productive? And whoever wants to.
Great, thank you.
Isolated in this, and I would love somebody to chime in on that, because we've got all our people here for this specific category.
So Jennifer and Patty, you guys decide who wants to go first.
Go ahead, Dr. Thronson, I'll follow up.
Okay. I think for this one, if we find a violation, then we go through correcting that violation, right? So that's where we lean on our corrective action rule if people are not in compliance, 113. And so that's already well defined by the board. We would go through that process. We would identify and say, hey, just like the complaint process in Part 277123, like we have lots of vehicles if we find things that are not in compliance or not meeting the expectations of the law. And we might find some of those through going through a monitoring process, right? So part of monitoring is just to say, are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? And if not, then we would typically say, hey, here's what we found. How would you like to address that? Submit a written narrative of how you're going to address that. And then if we think that's sufficient, then we would say, great, ask them to follow up when they've addressed it and to give us the evidence of that change. That's typically how we do this. So I think in terms of like, if we find violations or lack of compliance, we have lots of strategies for that. I think in this case, like adding that monitoring line of I think 6 years would be, because this is a large one, it's every LEA. You're looking at 180 potentially. That gives our staff 30 LEAs a year that they have to go ask for this from, and then ask for it again and ask for it again, because that's what this is typically tends to be. And 30 is a manageable amount that I think our staff can handle and still do their job of like providing professional learning, providing guidance, doing all the other things that we do. But this actually, I see it as a benefit of knowing what people are doing can also help inform the supports and resources we provide, right? Like there's a direct connection of like, oh, we see gaps in people having a hard time meeting this part of the law, we can help to support that through resources, professional learning, guidance, and so on. So I think it also helps to inform our work at the same time. And I am always, when I do this and staff are like, we can tell you, I'm trying to protect them. So 6 years would be great if that's okay with you all.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that, I don't care what the time frame is, but I just want to make sure we've got some time frame that's reasonable, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to go like a decade. I think a decade would be a little
Right.
too long. And some of this, like they work closely with some of these LEAs, and others we're going to really have to dig in more on. But I think we can set up a parameter of getting that information from the LEAs, reviewing it, and then having a like, oh, that's a compliance issue, or those kinds of things that we can work with them on. And we do this on a pretty frequent basis in our section anyway. We just, we get a complaint and they're like, oh, or we notice something. And I'll have staff go, how are we supposed to address this? I'm like, oh, we have rules for this. Like there's 113, there's 123. So we have lots of options that we can lean on if we do find those. So, and if any of you ever get those, like those can go to staff and we can investigate just like we do any of the complaints we get through the hotline and things like that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Dr.
following
Norman.
up on that, thank you. Following up on that great explanation. I wanted to kind of just do a little bit of a micro dive, Vice Chair Green, on your question. And that is the fact that after all of the rules and everything, everything's gone through, and maybe the curriculum is awesome, but we may have an individual teacher that is a bad actor, that is doing something wrong, as what your example was. So then we also have at the local level the HR policies that they can follow through with as well. And so that, and when I speak to educators right now, they're like, please follow up on that, because one teacher that is doing something that goes against the statute or the rule or whatever it is reflects on all of us, and then people think all teachers are doing that same thing. So even our teachers are really advocating on behalf of, if there's one teacher that is doing this, we're hoping that the LEA follows up. Well, our expectation, not hoping, is that they follow up with that teacher as well, so we can go from the macro, as Dr. Thronson was talking about, the rule, all of those things, and then the monitoring, the review of the curriculum, making sure those things are done, and then also down to that strategy level. That's where we really rely on our LEAs to ensure that those things are happening through their HR practices.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you very-
can we be more specific on just the superintendent shall review curricula and activities to ensure the effective instruction in American history and government. Effective, instruction of American history and government. That's specific to the law, not just just to make sure that that's what we're articulating for a percent of, there you go, on a rolling 6-year basis. So we've got actually what the law is asking us we have to do. I think that works. And Joanna, I was just talking to her, and she said they're in the schools already. This is just a more formalized, while we're there, we can, right, do this double check, right, and put some kind of a rubric or something together. So they've got already a pulse on what's happening. This just makes it, there's a little bit of formal, right, we're collecting a little bit of information more formalized so that we can report back out and saying, yes, we are doing this, we're being proactive, we're seeing these great things. There's a few things we've had to help with, but anyways, that's the way I see it.
Do we include local school board on that, or is that just?
I don't know on that one, because the law says it, I guess we're just putting in what we can do. It does say that the local school board shall too. Is there something we need to put in there for local, all right, where's our role?
It's already in code, and so we remind them in leadership meetings, so I don't know that it needs to go in role, or we are duplicating what's happening.
Yeah, or we could even, under where it does say an LEA shall, we could put in there periodically review, just that statement, right? Just letting them know too, that they should be periodically reviewing that.
Are you saying this?
Yes.
And you're repeating what's in the code. We usually don't repeat what's in the code.
Is it getting done?
I think so.
You do think so? Okay, I guess that's my question. That's why you would repeat it, or not. I don't know if repeat as much as draw attention to,
Yeah,
right?
no, I think they are very aware.
Okay,
Like this discussions in our leadership meetings that we.
okay.
Great. All right. Dr. Thronson, do you have another comment?
Yeah, I would just recommend that we add shall review LEA curricula and activities. Otherwise, it might insinuate like the
Oh,
stuff we
yeah.
have at the state, just for specificity.
Thank you.
And we're doing that already, right, at the state? We don't have to put that in code, right?
Yeah, correct. We don't have to review
Right.
ourselves.
It's rule.
So with this amendment, do we need to vote on this separately, or can it just be in the full motion at the end?
We might want to vote on it separately because I have a couple other recommendations.
Okay. Great. So we have an amendment to include the following line in section 3. The superintendent shall review LEA curricula and activities to ensure the effective instruction of American history and government on a rolling 6-year basis. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, and my next one is under section 3, which is patriotic, civic and character education. Elise, I think I sent you my document just a few minutes ago. Sorry, I couldn't get it to download the other day when I was working on this. I don't know why. So, anyways, I have 2 other recommendations, maybe 3. So without having to list off what happened during the legislative session on a couple of different pieces, I just wanted to put in here somewhere there needs to be we need to talk about integrated curriculum for kindergarten through 12th grade. Thorough study of historical documents. This is just key languages, and so possibly on 1, this is what I was thinking. An LEA shall provide instruction for patriotic, civic and character education in the social studies curricula. And then I was thinking of adding, including a thorough study of historical documents through an integrated curriculum. Or maybe it just needs to be, through a study, including a thorough study of historical documents in K-12. So if you, oh, you're putting that on there, it's good. Sorry. So on number 1, does that make sense where we're at?
Yeah, that's in code somewhere, right?
Yeah, right there's the thorough under this section
302.
So an LEA shall provide, so let's see if I've got it right. I'm sorry, you guys, I'm just jumbled here. An LEA shall provide for a thorough study of historical documents through an integrated curriculum. I don't know if it's necessarily the thorough study of the historical documents as much as the rest of it should be through, right? It just needs to be included.
Right, it should be including.
Yeah.
It's making it sound like the
Is
only
that
way
historical
that you're doing it is through historical
Yeah.
documents.
Which it is, but we also are doing other things too.
Yes.
So, all right, Elise, how about this? If you go to 1, it says an LEA shall provide instruction for patriotic, civic, and character education in the social studies curricula, including a thorough study of historical documents. And then I think it says like, or kindergarten through 12th grade, something like that, or 12th through kindergarten. If you're looking at the actual rule. Does that make sense? At least, I know you guys are like these miracle workers. Always.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, so it would say, an LEA shall provide instruction for patriotic, civic, and character education in the social studies curricula, including, that's where that including part comes in, including a thorough study of historical documents. It's got to be then in kindergarten through grade 12. So that would be the 1. Yeah, in kindergarten through grade 12. And that would keep the language that's there.
And then it through an integrated curriculum, is that included?
I don't
That's
think
on
it.
the 2. It's on number 2.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, number.
Oh, it's there. Sorry, it is there. Yep, you can take that little, yep, perfect. So that would be my next motion, that we add that in there, just that, so we're not having to list off documents and stuff, we're just saying a thorough study of historical documents.
Or it refers to the code that you're. So it says in 4 that we're going to be in line with 302 anyway.
302. Yeah, I guess I just wanted to make sure up here where we have it already, that patriotic, civic, and character education, right? That it's through with and a thorough. I see what you're saying a little bit.
You know, because it
Okay.
says we're going to ensure that this is met consistent with the requirements of 302. With where that's being pulled from. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So this one, although we do reference it up above too, when it comes to the integrated. I don't know, what's this body's thoughts? Leave it in?
We have a couple hands.
Sarah, I can't.
Dr. Johnson can go first. Usually answers my question.
I'm just curious, like this is exactly from code. Are we wanting to just restate it?
And that was actually my question.
Okay. We've just historically at the board tried not to copy what's in code into rule. So this is just me doing my thing.
It is, in fairness, it is referenced down below where it says the responsibilities that are articulated in sections, right, those sections. So whatever the body wants to do.
I'm fundamentally against the code there generally, so this will be a no for me. But
you're against the code or you're against?
I'm against the new integrations of the code from the previous law that was passed last legislative session, so I don't need it to be called out again in our rules.
Right here.
Which one are you?
Just the amendment shall provide instruction of patriotic, civic, and character education and the social studies curriculum.
I think it's just articulating that you'll have a thorough study of historical documents is what it's saying. But it's I guess it's up to the body. We don't have to necessarily repeat it, but we could. So well, we know where Sarah lands. What do you want to do?
I don't mind fortifying this area, so I would be a yes for it.
Okay. Randy, we can just make it as a motion then and then just see where the votes land on it. If that's okay.
Great. So we have a motion that we're adding in number 1. Is that what it is?
Yes.
And 2.
Well, just one for right
Just
now.
one.
Yeah.
An LEA shall provide instruction for patriotic, civic, and character education in the social studies curriculum, including a thorough study of historical documents in kindergarten through grade 12. And the point is that that is stated specifically in code. And now we're just repeating it for reinforcement purposes in rule. Is that correct?
That would be accurate.
Okay. All right. Any discussion or questions before we vote? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
No.
Aye. So it's 2-2. So,
Okay.
So does that fail?
So yeah, it doesn't move forward.
all right.
Yep. Okay, and then the next piece I wanted to add, and this is so we don't have to get into the weeds, but just stating so it would be under, where did I want that added? Let me make sure. So it would just be listed as a 3 under this same section. And it would say instructional materials of a religious nature may be undertaken within public schools as outlined in 53G 10-202. And there shall be no just including that there shall be no content-based censorship of American history and heritage documents due to their religious or cultural nature. And then also B, may include documents referenced in section 53G 10302. So instead of spelling things out, we're just saying, look, you can, you know, if it's of a religious nature, it can be used if it meets these requirements in code. That's good. That's my motion.
Say that.
I'm still on the end of not being supportive of the new additions to the code from the last legislative session, so this will be a no for me as well.
I think it will be number 4 because you added a number 3.
Oh, did we add a number 3? Okay.
On that review, we added a number 3.
Okay.
So this one falls under what section?
I have
Sorry.
53G 10202.
And on the rule, it's section 3 under patriotic, civic, and character education.
Yes.
Okay. And yeah, I feel like that's a clarifier. It ties in with all these other areas, and I think that addresses a big portion of our nation. So I would support it for those reasons.
And just to articulate under 202, 53G 10202, it's maintaining constitutional freedom in the public schools. Just that section itself just indicates that there are certain things that may be taught, and the kind of the framework around those, and that's why that's there. So people aren't thinking that they can't engage in that because it may have a religious tone to it, and that's not the case. We can, as long as it meets the requirements within this code. So that's why I think it's important to pull that out. So, and instead of listing specific things, it's just here's some documents that you can use as articulated in our code already.
So my question is, 302 is a subset of 202 with number B. I mean, we're just a little confused by that.
No, 302 actually has a listing of documents that can be discussed, and some of those are religious, and that does come from legislation this year. Just
Okay,
in the
so,
legislation.
but is that a subset of the 202 that's listed above? Because we say as outlined in 202, and then as a subset of that, we're saying you may reference but it seems to be under 202. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's okay. Is that all right if it sits under there? Because it's just saying these documents may be used even though they're of a religious nature. So to me, it is a subset and it sits there, but.
Okay, all right.
Is that what are you asking if it needs to be a separate item, maybe, Randy? Is that what I'm
Yeah, I just
understanding?
didn't know whether the 302 was referenced.
What do you
In
think?
202, does it say anything about 302? What's in 302?
Yeah, I just touched base with Michelle real quick to see if she thinks it maybe needs to be separated out, but it sounds like it feels like it fits there good, and she thinks it might fit there okay.
One tells you how to do it, and the other one tells you the list
What
of
to do.
documents you can use.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I set it up. Does that make sense, Randy?
Yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah. All right,
Okay.
thank you. Okay, so we have a motion. Number 4, instructional materials of a religious nature may be undertaken within public schools as outlined in 53G 10202. A, there shall be no content-based censorship of American history and heritage documents due to their religious or cultural nature. B, may include documents referenced in 53G 10302. It feels a little bit awkward just in terms of the wording. There shall be, that's a statement. Then B is just may include is kind of like a fragment.
So you're wanting to clean those
Documents,
up so they
maybe
flow
B,
better?
documents may be included, referenced in or something.
Or maybe documents referenced in 53G 10302 may be included in what?
Or just maybe
Included.
That word, at least. just-
Yeah, maybe included.
Yeah,
So that could be worded a little better.
so documents referenced in section 53G 10302.
Maybe included in instruction. I don't know, what do we, it's instruction, it's gotta be broader than that.
Can I ask the grammar experts in the room?
Good
Would that be
idea.
passive voice? Because I was told recently I cannot use passive voice anymore in rules. That's my problem.
Oh,
What
I get
part?
it, guys.
May,
May include, it's not passive, it's active.
but may is what it says in law. We can't do shall, they don't have to include all the documents listed there, but may is what's. Is that what you're asking?
I think the active passive on 4A, there shall be no content-based censorship. So it would be no content-based censorship of American history shall. Does that make sense? So it starts like active, like no content-based.
Oh, okay.
Here we go.
Her shall.
Of a religious or cultural nature shall occur. No content-based censorship of American history and heritage.
Yeah,
due
shall
to
occur.
religious or shall occur.
And then if we have an and right here rather than a period,
Yeah.
then we can say may include and may include documents. Does that fix that problem, Chair Booth?
Yep, I think that's great.
Okay. Thank you all so much for your help.
Thank you. Jennifer.
Yeah, I think to simplify it, you could make it a sentence and need no bullets. From a grammatical piece of just instructional materials of religious nature may be undertaken with public schools as outlined in 53-10-202 without censorship, and leave it there because the instructional materials already covers B, which includes documents referenced. And then I believe the intent is to not censor those documents because of those factors. You could just say without censorship, and then it's succinct. And I think it communicates what's being asked. It is already in code. So just to restate that piece. But if we want to restate it in rule, that might be a simple way to articulate all those in a coherent sentence.
There's lots of kinds of censorship though.
Yeah. I do like the way it's already worded. Because it's very specific on what kind of censorship can't take place, not just censorship in general.
Okay.
Yeah. I just like the clarity of it.
All right.
It could also be content-based censorship shall not occur. I mean, of American history, just, well.
Well, like. See
Yeah.
history.
And then you have the shall not together. Is it may
Okay,
not or
one
shall
more-
not?
One more option could be content-based censorship of American history and heritage documents shall not occur due to their religious, we could put shall not occur earlier in that sentence. Due to their religious or cultural nature. That's fine.
Content-based censorship of American history and heritage documents shall not occur due to their religious or cultural nature. There you go.
I think that one flows well.
And.
And then the and then the second
Yep,
line.
I like that.
Okay.
Okay. Looks good. You guys do good work.
All right. Thank you. So we have this before us. Any further questions or comments? I guess I should restate it. Sorry. Member Earl's motion is to amend 277475 to include the following subsection in section 4. Is that right? So we got to change the 4 up there on the top line. Instructional materials of religious nature may be undertaken within public schools as outlined in 53G 10-202. Content-based censorship of American history and heritage documents shall not occur due to their religious or cultural nature and may include documents referenced in section 53G 10-302.
It's actually,
Yeah.
it is subsection 3 that is, it's within subsection 3. It's a subsection 4 that you're adding to subsection 3.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, any other question, any other comments? Seeing none, let's vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, we have a 3-1, the no vote being board member Rio.
That's all the.
And just to clarify, I'm trying to stay away from us pulling code almost in its exactness into our rules. So that's one piece of it. And the other piece of it is that part of the code is, again, based on legislation that I wasn't a big fan of. So just to clarify my vote.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Board member Earl, are we?
I don't have any others in this section. I don't know, or this.
Any other board members have any other amendments? All right, so then we are back to the recommended motion.
No, I would have told you.
Okay, so the final motion is, does someone want to make that?
Can I clarify with Michelle?
Of course.
Well, first, I wanted to point out, we had not yet added the line about the category for the oversight framework, so we need to add that in. And then because there was not a draft, it was a continuation, we just made draft 1. Is that correct, Michelle?
Yes, I would say so.
So then this would be the final motion that we're approving draft 1.
As amended. Oh, no, it's draft 1. You're right.
You created it? Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much. So first we need to do the oversight framework line and then we can do the full.
Okay, so we have motion to amend 277475 to include the following line in section 1(3). This rule R277475 is categorized as category 3 as described in rule 277-111. Any questions or further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All opposed? That passes unanimously. Now the final motion.
Okay, I'll make that.
Thank you.
The motion is that the board, the committee approve R277475 draft 1 on first reading and forward to the board for continuation on second and final reading.
Thank you. The motion is the board that the committee approve our.
Oh, sorry. I
wouldn't be.
Let me reread it. I added continuation in there. It's not continuation.
Oh, but she did take on.
Yeah, so
like continuation.
That the committee approve R277475 draft 1 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading.
Thank you. The motion is that the committee approve R277475 draft 1 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, let's vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Did I hear? I didn't hear Memorial. If she just.
Oh, I said aye. Sorry. It was maybe at the wrong time when everyone else was talking. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Every vote is important. Andrea, thanks for making sure you're here and everything. Appreciate it. All right. Now we can move on to action item 3.5. R277, 730 kindergarten programs, and this is new. Elise, Darren, and Christine.
Thank you so much. So this is rule number R277730. This is called kindergarten programs, and this came out of legislation this past session about the difference or how to accommodate both the half-day kindergarten option and the full-day kindergarten classes that are now being instituted in our elementary schools. And we didn't really have a rule with this fit, so we created this new rule. We categorized it as a category 2 because we do, address issues as they arise, and we do some general providing of guidance and support. Christina Elegante can tell you more about that. She does an amazing job at that. I wanted to point out a few different definitions that we included here. There is the full curriculum half day. So that describes the curriculum that shall be provided during the half day option or shall be prioritized. That doesn't mean other things can't be included, but this is what the minimum standard is. Then there's a half day kindergarten option. And you know what? I just realized this is the wrong draft. Let me make sure I have the right draft. I apologize. Draft 2.
And Elise, I think it would be.
Do you want me to share?
If you share the whole draft, because then if they have, since this is a new one.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Okay. Are you all able to see the draft now?
Yes.
Okay, so you'll see the red and blue. It looks so much prettier now. So we've got the half-day kindergarten option, and that option can either be a designated class or an option in which a student participates in a full-day class for just half of the day, if that makes sense. And then there's some more specific requirements related to that further down in the rule. A half-day kindergarten student, we clarified that that is a student who is enrolled in half-day option and generates a 0.55 weighted pupil unit, so a WPU for the LEA. We felt like that was important because that creates certain requirements and restrictions for LEAs on what they can and can't do and their liabilities. So we just wanted to make sure that was clear for everyone. A half-day kindergarten class means that exclusive class. These definitions are really important in this rule because they really, there are some distinctions, some very fine distinctions. So I just want to make sure we all understood these. The minimum standards, again, the state-approved standards for content areas of English, language arts, and mathematics. So the legislation required us, or you all as the board, to set the minimum standard for what is taught in a half-day kindergarten option. And staff did some extensive collection of feedback from the field. So not only parents, but also teachers and LEA leaders to find out what was the best. And overwhelmingly, their feedback was that English, language arts, and mathematics was what needed to be the minimum standard. Now, this doesn't mean that more things cannot be woven in or added onto. This is just the baseline. Regional school.
So when do you want questions? When you get all the way through or while we're going?
Anytime.
Oh, okay. I just want to ask a question on that. Well, I understand that the English language arts and mathematics should be the prioritized, right? Curriculum content. I think there's more to kindergarten than that. And I'm worried if we say this is the minimum, which maybe that also might be the maximum. Does that make sense? I'm just concerned that what we end up really doing is saying, because you're only coming half day, we actually are not going to create a spectrum of opportunities for kids. We're going to limit it to English language and math. So they're not really, it's not really a half, it's not really a kindergarten program. It's once again half of the full day, but the most important part of the full day in academic sense, but maybe not in developmental sense. So I'm just trying to make sure that we're not creating, first of all, with some parents that are doing half day where they're not really getting any science or any library or anything because we're prioritizing just 2 items. Does that?
Yes. You said how can we developmental?
Yeah.
It's academic, but there's a development that happens with kindergartners.
I don't want this to be so restrictive that that when a district gets this, they think that's the only thing that they have to cover. So how do we do that?
Well, I think, Christine Elegante, K-3 literacy specialist at USBE. So with the word minimum, I think that's where that comes in, because minimum gives you the flexibility. That's the bare minimum. And going back to kind of when the conversation came about this during the session, what was actually being taught in a half-day kindergarten class, the focus has been, and it has been for several years now, it's English language arts. And then that's number one, and number two is mathematics. And then the other things are the other content areas like science and social studies. A lot of those standards are not being taught to mastery in half-day kindergarten. They haven't been. They are being what you call like embedded within mostly language arts. Some of those like specialty classes like library, music, and art, those kind of things they're bringing those in, but it just varies very widely across every
How can we word that in such a way that we're not getting into the weeds, but we're also saying we don't want to, if your program should not include just this. Does that make sense? That's where we can keep thinking about that. That's where I'm going to go with it in the end, is to make sure there's something more than just English language arts. And whether it's developmentally, we put something like developmentally appropriate other academic area. I don't know what that needs to be, but that to me, that's as much of a minimum as these other two items.
Yeah, and I think the developmentally appropriate, that is in the instructional pieces of it. So how the teacher is teaching, like when you're teaching kids how to read, it's developmentally appropriate because it's kindergarten. So they have that kind of thing. So developmentally appropriate.
That may not be the word then.
Yeah.
But I think it has to be broader than just these two. That's all I'm saying. And I'll keep thinking on that.
Okay. Yeah, I just think that the word minimum standards, when I think of minimum, I mean, that's like the bare minimum. That's like the lowest level of what you're doing. And another thing to think about is our kindergarten programs, they vary very widely. I think most of our LEs are up to 2.5 hours, but they go from 2.5 hours to, I think the longest half-day class is 3.5. So there's so much flexibility within the hours. And if you think about the recommended time for language arts, I'm a literacy specialist. So language arts for half-day, we've always recommended 90 minutes in a half-day program, and it's 120 in a full-day program. And if you add that in, and then when we talked to our early math specialist, she said, well, 60 minutes is what we would suggest. And I was like, oh, well, there's your 2.5 hours right there. That doesn't leave any time for anything else.
But that's my point right there. What you just said is my point, is there won't be any time for anything else.
Yeah, but those are recommended times. So I'll have to say some of the teachers that I reached out to, show me what your schedule looks like. And they're getting the minutes in language arts. They're not getting the minutes in math because they're incorporating some science and some social studies, not every day, but they're taking the math chunk of it isn't getting up to the 60 minutes in a half-day program. So.
And I do understand they won't be able to cover all, right?
Yeah, it's just not realistic.
We know that, but at the same time, I don't want it to be where it's only, when we focused, and I'm just, in upper grades, when we focus so much on the English language arts and the math to the point where kids are missing recess, right? Things like this that we actually know they need to have. I just don't want it to be so, I don't know, non-kindergartenish, right? That's a technical term.
Board Member Earl.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, I was trying to experiment with language as you were talking and staying within the rules, staying within the statute, and what do you think about, and Christine also, what might this look like with the LEAs that you talk to as well? So Christina, I heard you talk about mastery, and Board Member Earl, I heard you talk about something where they're seeing the other standards, and so in my mind it was exposure too. So is there something that we could do word-wise that is talking about approved standards for state approved standards for content areas of English, language arts, and math, and recommended exposure to other content areas to the fullest extent possible.
Yeah, something like that. It's still saying minimum standards, right? But it's not saying that,
It's only those two.
yeah, that's also your maximum, right? That's the concern. And that's what I've actually heard that from people last year that were like, we did a half-day program and they cut everything out but X, Y, the this and this. And so they didn't get any of the other stuff. So,
Well, and what's being said as well in this regard is that because this does place the burden on the teacher in such a big way. And so part of some dialogue that's out there is that, the LEA is saying, you can do half day, but your child will not be receiving art or the field trips or anything like that. So
extra.
it's being presented as they will be withheld these developmentally sensory areas if they're not full day. And I'm going to say time out because I've had 5 kids through the system and all 5 of them did half day and they got all of that. So for that to now be, weaponized, that they're not in kindergarten full day, I'd say is very problematic for the parents and children that would best thrive, in half day kindergarten. So how can we troubleshoot that? As a broad, throw that question out in the universe. I think we're trying to address it here and recommended exposure to other content areas to the full extent possible. A relief for a teacher with full days, you can extend those heavy minutes throughout the course of a day. However, that's been done for, as long as we can, as we've had our education system, is that kindergarten is a 2.5 hour, and they did crafts, they did music, they did, like physical activity.
Which they were often linked English language arts activities, right? That integration.
They were just embedded.
Yeah, they were embedded. So, and I don't know if exposure is the right word or if recommended inclusion of other content area to the fullest extent possible. I actually think that gets closer to hitting on that.
Should we add including at the end, including? I don't know though.
I don't know if it's necessary, but.
When you say including, are you meaning like saying examples of?
Yeah, like sensory activities,
you guys, science,
music, art, and I know we've got the other academics, so. Yeah, but it's always been done. So it's not something that's been.
I think it's been done, but it's been done less and less over the last few years.
I agree.
As you think about where we've moved, think about what we require. We're requiring assessments in kindergarten, right? And that adds extra layers onto things. So I think there's been a shift.
Yeah,
I would say for sure.
I have a big bin of K through 2 artwork, and my first grader, it's really sad.
Yeah, so I would say that there has been a shift, and I think that we do need to acknowledge that there has been a shift. I think a really tricky part of this, and in talking to, I talked to many parents. Some of them were the parents that were up on the Hill for this particular bill, and some of them, even parents couldn't agree on what they wanted in a half day. Everyone agreed. English language arts and mathematics, those are important. But then some want this and some want that. And that's where the tricky part lies in, and also like charter schools, for example. Charter schools have very specific things in their charter that their community buys into, and they want to see that. For example, world languages. You won't find the world languages in other schools, but maybe a charter school has that as their priority. So they make time for that in a half day. I saw that I got to observe that in a half day class. But that again was a 3.5 hour half day class. And parents were willing to have their kids there for 3.5 hours so that they could get that, because that's something they had buy-in for. Right. It just makes it very difficult. So that's kind of why we've kind of left it just at the 2. But I think that addition of the language in green is a good
Okay, do you think it balances that?
Yeah, I think it doesn't, I think it does send that message that it's not just these two
Yeah.
things, but there are other.
And I didn't want to list the others because you're right, there is, and sometimes it's a teacher's expertise too, right?
Exactly.
So, okay. Randy, we could probably vote on that if that's okay, and then we can move on to the next part. Is he on?
I would just like to make just a little comment. The years that I was on the local board for 16 years, I was always concerned about, that it was always English language and math, and then the others. And just making the statement, I understand that we've got to concentrate on this, but making that statement where we involve the other content areas is so critical, because I don't want to telegraph to the state that we are, as a state board, saying that math and English, that's it, and everything else is going to have to bow to what we are recommending they've got to do in these two areas, because they have got to find a way to get those other content areas into the day, and to group everything else into the other category as if it's less important or less critical to the development of a whole healthy child, is not what I would want to be putting my name to. I want the whole shooting match. And if we can't do the whole shooting match, we need to be realistic and communicate that. And we certainly don't want the other content areas to feel that we consider those content areas as second-class citizens, though there is a critical need for English language and mathematics at the top of the list. It's right next to social studies, science, the arts, and all the other durable skills that we're trying to teach a kid as they're growing up, even at the kindergarten level. So I'm grateful that we have this little section in here, that we're recommending and we're going to vote on right now.
Can I just add, because in the lines above, we say approved standards for content areas of those, do we need to say anything about, address the standards of these content areas, of other content areas? Do we need to add standards in there at all? Just a thought.
Probably.
Standards.
It could be a replacement, and it could just be of other standards instead of content areas.
Oh, yeah, it could be other standards.
And maybe
Or
it's
other
additional.
content area standards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that does.
Okay, great. So the motion is amend line 3738 to read and recommended inclusion of other content area standards to the fullest extent possible. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. Those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Oh, we got everybody. All right. That's unanimous. Thank you. All right. And now we're back to, or do we have additional concerns?
Do you want me to keep going through it, and then as
keep going through it. I have a couple of others, but keep going through it.
Yes,
Awesome.
please.
So regional school is a definition that comes again out of the legislation, in which there were parents who were concerned, or LEAs, that what they ended up doing was having one school in the district who had a full day kindergarten, somewhere, or a couple, right? So that it maybe doesn't have to be within one school, but could be within a couple nearby schools. And then we just wanted to clarify that that does not apply to charters, because charters don't have a boundary. That can be really tricky. And we worked with the charters to try to figure something out, and it was so hard. So for now, it just says districts, LEA, region, and then registration was the other kind of tricky part that we would love your feedback on. So the legislation required that if 19 or more students were signed up for a half-day kindergarten option within a school, there needed to be an exclusive half-day kindergarten class. The difficulty with that, however, is that it's public school. People can register for school even after the school year starts, right? And that's really difficult for LEAs if they only had 17 students and then we have 2 more half-day kindergartners register in September and October. They've already made classroom assignments and hired teachers. And so we have clarified that the registration period needs to be determined by the LEA and clearly communicated to the public and the community that this is the time in which we are taking registration for kindergarten. You can always register outside of that, but this is the time in which we are going to make our determinations about which classes we have and options we have available. That makes sense.
Okay, stop there for just a second. I know everybody has different priorities, right? Just different, designated priorities. I don't want to come back next year and have to have another bill because districts prioritized their, their initial gather of information, and it really didn't capture the bulk of the students. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm just trying to think ahead, right? And I understand it's complex for districts if they get to August and they still don't know how many rooms they need, how many teachers, right? At the same time, it's very frustrating for parents to be like, oh shoot, there were 15 people, but I missed the priority. Now we have to go in, you know what I mean? So I'm trying to, and maybe there's not an easy way to settle this option, but especially where districts, we don't want to say you have to do, well, I don't know, maybe we do want to say, but
it's sort of like, how do you plan without being able to plan?
Right. And at the same time, feel like, parents would feel like if they had a large number of students that wanted half day, but it hadn't met the exact criteria, I don't know. It just gets complicated.
That's already happened.
Yeah.
So, and you've probably heard that already, they're like at 13, but so now the 13 students will be like coerced or forced to go full day because there's not enough, to get to that threshold, but there might be in the fall, but they can't, you're planning without knowing what to plan for, kind of a thing. So it's a problem already.
Can I also,
and some districts have such a demand for full day in some cases that they also are able to figure out how to manage both the half day and the full day with the demand for full day as well. So yeah, it's hard.
Mm-hmm. So
sorry.
Go ahead, Elise.
Can I bring up, we presented this rule to the superintendents earlier this week to get their feedback as well on the wording. And one of the things I had not considered, but that they brought up is that actually what has happened to a lot of districts more often is that they have half-day kids signed up for half day. They create that separate class, and then their parents change that registration to full day sometime later on in the year. And that can be for various reasons. And that's fine, but there is movement on both ends, which makes it really hard for administrators to make those decisions. So just wanted to bring that up as well.
Thank you. Dr. Thronson.
Yes, thank you. So this one, and Christine, I'm sure can speak more to it, but this really comes down to hiring, having space. You can't wait until the first day of school to make those decisions. So to be able to have enough kindergarten teachers to be in place for that is an adjustment depending on how many classes they need, whether they're in wrapping those into the full day class with half day option, or having a half day class itself. You need another room, you need another teacher. And so that is really the limitation on this. It's not wanting to meet people's needs. It's about the actual fiscal and human resources required to meet those needs. And that's been the biggest challenge. And that is why they kind of need to have a cutoff date so they can make those decisions and get the hiring in place that they might need.
Yeah, and then I'll just add 2 things to this. The first one is some interesting feedback that I got from parents. They felt that not having a registration cutoff date for them meant that they felt like the LEAs were not being transparent enough with them. Because they couldn't tell them you have, and I was like, oh, I guess I hadn't thought of it on that side, that the parents were upset because they were like, they felt like they were
still don't
hiding
know,
it. We don't
right?
know. We know what we want and we know what we're willing, you know, some of them were willing to take their child to a neighborhood school that had half-day option, like had a half-day class, designated class. Others were like, no, we'll just do the option within a full day model, that's fine. But waiting until very end, that caused a lot of angst among the parents. So the parents were really, really supportive. And when I asked all of the stakeholders that we asked, and of course, the first option was, you know, let the LEA decide, make that choice. We have some like charter schools run lotteries in January. You have district schools. Some of them have open enrollment, so you don't have to register at your neighboring school. The whole district is open for you, and so they have everything in place in March. So that's where it came tricky. So I did ask, like, if there was a date, when would you like a date? If there was a date set and it was universal across the state. And the second choice was April 15th, with May 1st being the latest. That would cause some issues with some districts. They'd have to like do workarounds with that. But if the committee felt like they wanted to create a date, that's kind of the feedback that I got. April 15th or May 1st at the latest.
Okay, I wonder if there's value in that. I appreciate us having this discussion so we could thoroughly vet this, because I wanted to know all the different avenues, and I'm not sure that there's a solution, but maybe I wonder if there is a cutoff date so that they're not, like you said, they're not going into the summer, right, without people knowing, but also parents have a pretty good idea. We've got to commit early so that they, you know.
And the parents express that. A lot of them, we already know. We know our kid, we know what they want and what's going to work for them. And we just need to know what we're going to have, and then we can do our workaround. And that goes in with the guidance that we're going to be creating, that's going to go along with this role. And the guidance really is going to be, once you have that registration cutoff date, then you have to be transparent. Here's our options. Here's where our half-day designated classes are. You have an option to enroll in one of those classes so that they actually know. And if we don't have a cutoff date, I don't think that's going to be able to happen.
I would recommend the May 1st if they're looking at either the middle of April and end of or 1st of May. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
That's just their second choice, April 15th or May 1st. Like I said, it's good for some and not for others, but you know.
I think we put a deadline, a date in here just so that for everyone it's kind of consistent, right? And they have an idea. I don't care. You're saying that they would prefer the April 15th, but the May 1st would work?
Yeah,
I just kind of feel like
it really just depended on what LEA.
Right.
And charter schools, the same thing.
They've got to do their budgets by June. That's why they have to have those, a local LEA, they've got to have their budget ready before July. So they've got to know where they're spending their money on and in what areas, right?
Yeah, and then staffing is staffing is really tricky.
Maybe we better do April 15th.
And that's why they
April for parents and April for the schools.
Yeah, and that's the hiring. So if you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
If
So
you
I
have a teacher.
recognize that we need this date, and that it will, particularly for parents, we need to be transparent for parents, but I'm also feeling uncomfortable knowing my superintendents, knowing my administrators in the districts that I represent. I know that they are able to figure these things out and may not, well, I'm quite certain they will not be appreciative of a date set.
What if we put, but Randy, what if we put before May? We just indicate, we're not an actual number, but just say the priority registration happens before May.
Something like that, I think is good, because it, you know, and in order to accommodate parents and districts and all of the hiring and everything, that kind of a general statement, I think is good. But to set a date, I feel I'm squirming. I'm feeling
okay. I think that's
okay.
Good. Let's just say before
Superintendent Nielsen.
Let's just say before May then, just so that there is an expectation, but we're not setting what that expectation is.
You're still giving them the flexibility to set it.
So I guess it would be under section 4, if I'm looking at this, right? The LEA's designated priority registration happens before May, within something like that, or occurs
May.
before May. Yeah.
Can I ask, and maybe this is Michelle, should this go in the definition? So in line 40 and clarify that this can be a timeline, but that timeline cannot extend past May 1st or something? Or would it be better to have this in the content?
I think it's gotta be it's priority, not, because registration can be 2, more than one.
Just asking, should it be on line 39 and 40 in the definition?
Yeah.
So it would look
I like that
like
idea.
registration
cannot extend.
means a timeline, and B shall not, I don't know how to say it, not exceed or go past May 1st or something.
Except for that's the priority registration. Those are 2 different things. Because registration, go ahead. Am I
In
wrong?
terms of this rule, when we use the word registration, we mean the priority kindergarten registration, and that's only for this rule. This was really tricky to write, so if you've got clarity.
The half-day class. But they still have.
Oh, I see.
Option after.
Out of their community for priority.
Okay. That was one of my questions, if somebody moves or
So
changes their
which shall
mind, can they
be
still,
set at?
Do you think
can
that's
they
gonna be
still sign up for the half day?
using the registration occur at any time
After May? You know, like if they were.
Districts should be the ones that are setting this date.
No, I
And
do
then
too.
it's
I just don't know if it's
not registration for half
They
day,
can
can they
register
still
later,
register their child for half day?
Does that make
Even
sense?
if it was registration policy.
No, they can register all year long.
Registration is specific.
Because you can choose to like homeschool your child and then you can register them halfway through the
How about
year.
if we just make it positive and say priority registration may occur until May 1st?
Okay,
19.
something like that would be good. Maybe it's a B or something.
And Ellie will still be transparent about, here's what.
I just want to articulate is the priority registration, because people can register any time of year. But this is specific for, yeah, that works. What do you think on that?
I'm gonna make a note of that.
Yeah. I'm good with that.
Are we good? Okay, so we have this motion that under number 7 to amend registration means the timeline an LEA has established and communicated out to their community for priority kindergarten registration. Priority registration may occur until May 1st of the
That's telling you that a district has to keep it open until May 1st, the way that you have it written right there. Priority registration may occur until May 1st. So you're telling a parent, I have until May 1st.
You're saying our wording was.
And the LEA may want to cut it off in April.
Like
or
the
something.
charters that cut off in January and say their lottery is in January.
Prior to May, right? So prior, something like that.
Shall be set sometime prior to May 1st. Set by the LEA. To occur. Shall be set by the LEA to occur.
Prior to
May 1st.
Yeah, I think that works.
Okay, good. So are we ready to vote?
Yeah.
Okay, the motion is Board Member Cole's motion. Registration means the timeline an LEA has established and communicated out to their community for priority kindergarten registration. The priority registration shall be set by the LEA to occur prior to May 1st of the previous school year. And this is general priority kindergarten registration, not priority half-day kindergarten registration?
It's saying that a parent will say whether they want full day or half day prior to,
Okay.
or by the priority registration date.
Okay, all right.
I'm
Great.
still
Have a
worried that
motion?
that's saying that they have until May first. I think it still reads.
Just prior to May, just take the number off, we still have prior to May.
What you're really wanting to say, but I don't know the right words, is it can be set any time before that the LEA may select a priority registration date, which may be any time prior to May 1st. Or shall not be after May 1st. I don't know the right way to say that.
I think it's the shall be set that maybe is throwing us off there. Priority registration.
So what you want to say is that LEA doesn't have to keep it open until any later than.
How just priority registration shall be set by the LEA to occur before May 1st of the previous school year.
So it's telling them that you have to set your date. May 1st is your cutoff date.
Oh, well, that's not what I meant, but
Yeah, that's what worries me.
anytime before.
No later than.
All right. No later than, maybe.
So you think like that does it still, or?
To conclude no later than May 1st. Why can't we just say it's set by the LEA?
That the LEA must establish a deadline.
I'm not sure how to say it so that it doesn't sound like the LEA has to keep it open till
But
May
it just,
1st.
yeah, right, an LEA may establish a deadline that doesn't extend beyond May 1st. I don't know.
If we do that, is there a way that we could include how or have ways that the LEA is required to reach those parents? Because I see a lot of like, I had no idea.
It's,
type
there
of
is some down
conversation.
further, yeah.
Okay.
Can I offer a comment? I'm wondering if we need this line at all, or if we leave the language as it is. So a timeline that the LEA establishes and communicates out to their community, they have an incentive to do it before May 1st anyway, right? Because that's what they want to do. And then in the guidance that Christine provides, she can provide more details in what that could look like, or examples or models of a timeline. But I don't think that they're going to want to do it after May 1st anyway. I think you guys are right to say that's probably the last deadline they would want to set for themselves. So just a thought.
Yeah, I think
That sounds good to me. I don't know. Other board members?
It's a timeline that LEA has established and communicated out to their community for priority kindergarten registration. That's probably the best way.
let them have that option.
Yeah.
Probably the best way.
What are we gonna?
We just leave it as it is, means the timeline and LEA has established and communicated out to their community for priority kindergarten registration. And can I just get a definition of what priority registration is again? So I can understand that. When it says.
So this is the section where we use that language. So when the LEA is communicating the different options that are currently available, an LEA shall offer a half-day kindergarten class when 19 or more students enroll as a half-day kindergarten student during the LEA's designated priority registration within the student's boundary school or regional school within the LEA. So this clarifies that that is the time period in which a school has to monitor and make sure that when they hit that threshold that they have to offer an exclusive class.
Thank you.
I think we're good. Even though we,
Okay.
yeah, I just, the more, and that's the value of working through it in a committee, right? Is to really understand the dynamics around it. So.
Yep.
And most of them aren't gonna wanna go beyond May anyways, so that's, and I just wanna make sure people are notified so that they can do it, but. Yeah, all right.
Okay, I have one more question on this then, about 52 lines, 51 to 53. And again, the priority registration, the deadlines put out by the school. The word from parents right now, and I got a lot of this on a thread that I had followed, just looking through what this was feeling like for parents, is that if they open that registration and during that timeline from earlier, they don't meet that threshold to trigger a class that is a half-day kindergarten class. But then over the course of May, June, July, August, or let's just even say, before the school year starts, does an LEA have to open up a full day kindergarten?
That's what this rule is saying, is no.
Do they have to open, just to
It's
clarify, a class or an option? They are required to provide an option. And so that gives them the flexibility if they, let's say they went and they were looking and they were on the border of hitting that 19. Some school districts are going to go ahead and create what you call a regional school and say, this is gonna have a designated half-day class here. They may not be at that 19, but then they still would offer that as an option to parents as they enroll in that May, June, July, August, probably through September, probably through the couple of first weeks of school, because that tends to happen in kindergarten registration. They would open that up, and they still are required to give them an option, not necessarily a designated class at their particular school, unless the school already has it.
Because I just know, the conversation is that people move a lot. Your child, you realize it's just going to work better for half day. And I'm focusing just on half day. I know that this applies to, full day.
Yeah.
Like I know, but I'm just going to isolate. Yeah, it goes both ways. So I'm just going to isolate on just those that are very concerned about not being able to do or have that work for a half day class. So if the 19 is not met at an LEA, but during the deadline that we just specified will come from the school, but over the course of the summer, it is met, there will not be a full day or a half day class offered. And I'm thinking that's because they don't have a teacher that they were able to hire to accommodate that need.
Maybe even a room, right?
All of those things.
But they may want to, because that will be so disruptive to the full day class to have that many kids pulled out. So you can't say they're not required to, but they may still do it.
Because of the flexibility
They
too,
still
if they
have the
can.
flexibility to do that if they have that many kids, and it may work better for them rather than pull that many kids out for a half day in their full day class. They may say it's better for us to create this half day class, but they're not required to under the rule and law.
Okay, and that was one of the things I was trying to figure out, like how this lays out in the law.
The law doesn't give a date.
Prohibits that.
Yeah, the law doesn't give a date.
can LEAs create, well, I'm sure, you know, local control, they can do whatever they want to some extent. I just want to know that if that were to be an arguing point that, no, you missed the deadline, we're not going to do that now. They don't have to do that then, if that registration didn't fall within this rule.
Is there a way to, and maybe what I understand what you're saying, is there a way to put that flexibility in there? Because really, even if it meant the 18 students requirement, they could still do a half-day kindergarten class with 17.
So some are even planning on doing
Yeah.
that.
Is there a way just
They
to
know that their
create that
communities.
flexibility language in here that if you have to, here's the criteria, but after that deadline, an LEA would, I don't know, have their own flexibility, that we're just saying that you don't have to meet the 19 if you want to create your own flexibility. Is that kind of what you're saying? Like are we too rigid on the 19?
Just putting some language up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I believe those are some of the conversations like districts like Alpine and
Yeah.
Davis are having as they are working through, they have some hot spots. So they are trying to get ahead of that and say, if we, you know, they're going more with we're gonna put a regional half-day class at particular schools and then communicate that out and give parents the option of, you know, you can transfer your child to, are you okay with coming to the school? So some of them are already thinking about that.
I would also put, yeah, something like that, at least, and maybe even after the priority registration deadline.
I guess what I'm also wanting to just clarify, can an LEA say, we cannot or we will not do a half-day class because the minimum 19 was not reached at the time of deadline?
With what's written in the rule? Yeah.
Can that happen?
That's what the rule is saying can happen.
That is what the rule is saying. Do they have the flexibility if the threshold is met after registration to create that class in their school?
Absolutely.
It does add that flexibility.
It
Okay.
does. Absolutely.
Okay, so like our principals have the ability, they have the flexibility to kind of maneuver through that. I can go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it, you know, and it goes back to, sorry, Julie Clark, Literacy and Early Learning Coordinator. It does go back to, it gives the LEAs the option to decide, do we have enough students? Do we have a classroom? Do we have a teacher? Can we make that happen for these teachers? It gives the LEAs the ability to decide that, and really it is up to them, you know, to make that decision. But it, you know, lots of things happen, you know, throughout the summer. We know that kids move and families change, and you know, I know at the schools that I always worked at, they always ended up having a new student registration in August. You know, you just never know what's going to happen during those times. And I know that there's always a scramble at the beginning of the year for staffing changes and teachers moving grades because, you know, 5 kids didn't show up in this class that we anticipated showing up because they moved but didn't tell us. And so there's always those shifting and changes that can take place. And it all lies within the decisions of the LEAs and the superintendents and the BAs and what do we have money for? What can we provide? Where is the room? And, you know, this allows them to have that flexibility.
Emily, what does that touch that? If we were to put something in there, just drawing attention to the fact that, look, yeah, we said 19, but you actually have the flexibility if you want it.
Yeah.
Does that hit it or not quite hard enough?
Okay, so let's focus on that for a minute. Nothing in this subsection prohibits an LEA from offering half-day kindergarten classes outside of the requirements.
Probably the requirements listed in this rule.
Because I'm gonna recognize the logistics of running your school, just like you're saying. You've got the classroom, you've got the teacher, you've got all the supplies, you've got all the things that go along with transportation, whatever. So I'm a good nod to that. I feel and anybody can clarify this for me, that that half-day kindergartners are gonna be, the redheaded stepchild. That they're a pain in the side because literally, they're now more burdensome. Because the half-day children are going to have to trigger another teacher, another classroom. And so it's almost like it's putting half-day children at a disadvantage and a thorn in a school's side.
I don't know that we've ever experienced anybody saying that to us. Like, it's not something that we have heard. When we've talked to teachers and they have kids that leave in the middle of the day, they don't seem like they're negative about it. Does that make sense? So like what we have heard. So I
can clarify where that's coming from for me, like where I'm bringing that from.
Yeah.
It's that, and I'm going to use this word, recognizing how complicated this is, that parents that do want the half day are feeling like this level of being threatened or reprimanded because they're just not going along to get along. Like they're being so difficult, like full day kindergarten is better for your kids. Like it places them in an argument that they just don't want to have. But now they have to have the argument if a threshold of 19 isn't met. So that's what's happening. And I don't know what to do about that. Because what happens is if the 18 are there, then they'll say, well, go find another student. And it's left to the parents to recruit a half day to get the needs. And so they're begging for that educational structure instead of it being built in as it always has been. I don't know what to do about it.
I don't know if there's something we can do about that. I understand what you're saying, and I understand that some of the parents on the Hill that came for this particular bill, when I talked to them, they talked about the animosity in their communities. And that's something that in this day and age seems to be the status quo. And I don't know if we can really alleviate that other than making sure our LEAs are just very transparent. And that's really what this board rule is all about, is being transparent about here are your options. I think it's really difficult. I don't know how this body can try to work in communities. I feel like that's a lot on the LEAs because that's within their communities. It's not happening in every community. And from what I've heard from those areas that have been doing full day kindergarten, they've been doing it district-wide longer because of the OEK funds and the full day K funds in past legislative sessions. For a year or two, it was uncomfortable for those parents that were choosing a half-day option within a full day model. And then all those things settled down. Obviously, you're going to have parents heightened feelings and emotions attached. Obviously, you understand that if you're a parent, like you want what's best for your kid, but you can't change someone's perception of that. Like, I know as a parent, I made the decision based on, for both of my kids, they were different decisions for their kindergarten, and I just left it to that. And I did what it was, didn't worry about what my neighbor was doing. And I just did what I wanted to do, what I felt was best. And so I really don't think that's really something that this body can really, it's something we can encourage our LEAs to try to work on in their communities.
Could we, I don't know what that looks like. It sounds like there was meetings with the superintendents. I don't know if this is something that we need to build into a guidance policy or training. Again, this is a realm I'm not familiar with, but I'm going to put it out here. Can we talk to our superintendents and our LEAs to say that the students that want half day are not to be made to feel that they are grungy little, gutter children because they're not going to go to full day kindergarten, or parents are irresponsible and uneducated because they're not going to send their kids full day. I mean, and I think we're aware of all the reasons, hundreds of reasons why that child thrives in a half day instead of a full day, or the mother just wants to baby step them into the public. She's gonna give her kid away, you know, for the next 11 years anyway. She's gonna savor this beautiful time of a 5-year-old where they leave for 2.5, come back to her arms for the rest of the day. Like, there's all those
We
working
did
parts.
send out, and I think we said, I know we sent it on to everyone, but made sure because we were seeing some problems crop up, right after the bill was passed and stuff. And we sent a notice out that had, you know, articulated this, you can't do this, this, and this. So I'm thinking maybe that's just making sure. And do you remember getting the notice? Maybe when you talk to your LEAs, I can resend it to you too, so you've got it fresh. Just making sure that you're articulating the very thing, because when I go out to my LEAs, I do go down a list of hot topics. That's one of them. So,
Could we include it somewhere as we develop this? How can we send this out statewide?
I feel like you just want to say sometimes can't everybody just be respectful and nice to everyone all the time? You know what I mean? But really that's what we're getting down to, right? We want everybody to respect everyone else's decisions and be kind and, you know, kind of going with that golden rule, treat others how you would want to be treated. And so I think as we message things out, we can really emphasize that with our stakeholder groups as to, you know, remember that when you talk to your families and you talk to your parents and you hold your kindergarten roundups and your other things that you are messaging out, just to be respectful of everybody's decision and treat everyone fairly. I think that's messaging. I think that's something that we can definitely send out and share as we.
And I think we also say, and beyond kindness, there is now it's this law.
Yeah. So
it's very heavy-handed against half-day children. So the system creates a natural battle for half-day students to exist in it. So they're already at a disadvantage. And so I'm just.
Dr.
Yeah, thank you. As I'm listening to this conversation, it's a powerful conversation, and it could be had, I think, in most of our rules and everything. And I really appreciate it being brought up. So as you were talking, I was trying to go into where do we already have it somewhere that we could use that same reference to another area to say, make sure you're following this as you speak to parents. And I'm wondering if it is an R277-217 educator standards and LEA reporting. And I'm looking in the area of 23 to 425. And this one is on 25 because 23 is discriminate against, 24 is invite, suggest, or encourage students to reconsider. But 25 says use the educator's position through instruction materials or symbols to actively endorse, promote, or disparage a particular partisan, religious, denominational, sectarian, agnostic, and so in a manner inconsistent with the policy of the educator's LEA. So I'm just wondering if we have something in there that we could just reference, you know, ensure LEAs follow this in working with parents who may choose either option. I don't know, at least I'm kind of looking at you to be able to just say, if we have it in there, we can just refer back to what the educator conduct or the administrator conduct has. And if we don't have it right now, maybe we could get it ready and have it ready for the full board with that language in there, if that's something you'd like for us to look into.
I like that. I appreciate that.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe we circle back around to that or keep that discussion going?
Yeah, that's something that if you wanted to pass this now and then just say, yeah, right there, yes. Include a reference to language with R277, 217 that will bring back that draft as the next draft in the full board.
Sounds good. Excellent. Great idea. Thank you. All right. So we're ready then for a full motion.
Are we ready? Did we get all the way through it?
Are we gonna do this one first?
Did we not get all the way through it, Elise?
No.
Do we need to vote on that number 5 though first?
Okay.
There's not much there. Okay. Thank you.
We are
Okay.
voting on amend line 56, 57 to read, quote, nothing in this subsection prohibits an LEA from offering a half-day kindergarten class outside of the requirements listed in this rule. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Sorry, I think, hold on really quick. Sorry that we got distracted down the half day kindergarten piece. So I just want to go back. Nothing in this subject from offering half day kindergarten class outside of the right.
So
Yeah,
it gives
sounds
LEAs the complete
So you're,
freedom to do what
you're
they.
a verbal, no,
Yes. Thank you,
thank
Andrea.
you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And now do we need to say something about the last item we just discussed regarding referencing the 27727?
Like a motion, something to the extent is ensure LEAs follow R 277217. And I don't know how to finish that sentence. In regards to.
It's like educator,
It was the
professional conduct. Yeah.
the educator conduct.
Sorry, I was just looking at that letter, reading it again, which I think we did a good job on that letter. So it addressed those issues you're talking about, but I'll send it to you. So it's at the top of your email. Sorry, I got distracted. Okay. I think it could just reference professional conduct, right? That's what we're looking at here.
I personally don't love this, mostly because it feels a little threatening in our rulemaking. So I'm probably going to be a no on that.
Okay, where are we looking at putting it in? Just gonna see.
And mostly to clarify, like I just don't like I don't like putting it in because if there was like a widespread issue that we had that felt like it needed to be putting that in the rule, then that would be one thing. But for me, it just feels like, and don't you forget kind of vibe for me, and it doesn't feel like it fits in the rule. So that's more clarification on where I'm.
I think there's, yeah, I understand that. Again, this one red area that I was just kind of watching, it was, and it's not like, I think it just goes back to, I don't know that it's people being that deliberate. I think it goes back to the half-day conversation is already an uphill battle at this point.
Yeah, no, I get from our whole conversation. And I think that's something that can be done in communication, and it's more of like a cultural shift. Like there's a lot of folks, you have a lot of folks that are feeling issues with half-day kindergarten. I have a lot of folks that are grumpy because they can't get into full-day kindergarten. There's not enough funding and opportunity available. So we both see both sides of it. I just from a rulemaking perspective, I don't like putting this in there just to feel like we have to remind them, because I think that our LEAs understand and know that, and every community has different, needs. Some are wanting more half days, some are wanting more full day. And so I just would rather leave it out and leave it up to the local and trust them to know that they're trying to make it work for their community and the parents' needs.
I think I would still like to, and we can put this forward as a motion. An LEA shall comply with educator conduct standards as described in R 277217 when communicating kindergarten options. And I'm trying to find Superintendent Norman. I've landed on 25 in the educator standards. think that's
Yeah, I
one
was
that you.
looking at, I was looking at line 25, but I know we can't reference it by line.
Yeah.
But I was looking at the language on line 25. With disparage, yeah.
And so I'm supportive. I think it's a nod to a very real, organic dialogue that is happening throughout the entire state of Utah. This is new. We've never new territory. We have things in place. I think if it is a cultural shift, then we bring in those, you know, those pillars that help it succeed.
If you wanted to be more precise on that one, you could do R277-217 section 2, and then prohibited conduct by an educator in that way. Yeah. Just a thought.
Yeah, I want us to be careful we don't get, I do agree with Sarah. I don't want it to be heavy-handed or whatever. At the same time, is there, yeah, however we word it. I guess I should put my glasses on, huh? An LEA shall communicate kindergarten options in accordance with. Oh yeah, I think we're good there. I just didn't want to say, look, punitive in measurement, right?
Okay.
I think that's good. That's straightforward. If they need to be reminded, so they've been reminded in a very simple way by referring to rule.
Yeah.
So I think that's good. So shall we vote on that?
Well, do we add anything? I guess this would be separate, but kind of coming back to how the engagement from USBE goes kind of statewide to our superintendents and LEAs. If we can put that in somewhere that we can just give a nod to, there is a level of complexity that is now associated with half-day kindergartners, and to be mindful of that. And I would love any kind of follow-up that if it's not like in there right now, kind of solutions that you guys were able to come up with that would help address that. Would that be okay?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay. And does that need to be a motion? I don't think it needs to be a
I think
motion.
we can direct staff without it being a motion.
Yeah.
Where's Patty?
Okay, so we'll just keep that separate. Okay.
Patty, are you understanding what is being asked? And
Yeah,
Jennifer,
absolutely. Yeah, and that's a reminder in all of our areas. So that is something, yeah, we can put out.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So now, where are we?
Back to the motion.
That motion there?
Did
The
you
two
get ready
seven,
for the final motion, or did you have other items?
just the last one that we just added for the 217. Where was that?
I don't have others. I looked at that down through the communication looks good to me. The bottom part, we're just communicating with
And
parents.
so we need to, do we need to do that number 7?
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion that an LEA that we amend line 50, whatever that is, to read. An LEA shall communicate kindergarten options in accordance with R277-217.
Oh, there's not an oversight category.
Oh,
I meant to tell you that earlier. I'm sorry.
yeah, that's right. I've been trying
You
to
might
type
wanna
one
add that.
too.
I thought it was a 2.
Yeah.
It says up on.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I see it now.
Yep, that's
I'm
fine.
wrong. I'm
Oh,
wrong.
No
it
worries.
says just right under the
So you're
top.
good.
Okay.
All righty. So any further discussion regarding number 5?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, let's vote. All those in favor say aye.
I
Those opposed?
No.
Okay, board member Reel is a no, and 3 yays. All right, now we're ready for the original final motion. You want to
Anything else there that you
It's
see?
just a couple of technical things, like there's a capital K.
Oh, yeah, so
There's
but
some
those
of
could
those,
be,
but
okay.
we can work on those before it goes.
Okay, I'll make the motion. The motion
Thank
that the
you.
committee, did you have anything else, Emily?
No.
Okay, motion that the committee approves R 27773.
Can I clarify?
Please.
Sorry, this is just something that I have messed up the last few months, so I want to make sure I do it correct. So if we have amended this, with these lines, is this draft 3? Should we be approving?
Okay.
Sorry, one more time, please.
So that was draft 2 that we made significant amendments on. Is this now draft 3 that we're approving? And I guess I'm maybe asking Michelle.
I'm
So
not
that when
sure
this
how
goes
you
to the
guys
board,
have
we have
done
to
that.
correct.
I'm not sure how you've done that in the past, at what point in time you said it was a new rather than amended, I'm not sure.
I have messed it up the last 2 months, so.
Elise, my understanding is that it would be, we're now gonna approve draft 2 as amended, and then when we move it forward to full board, it will be draft 3.
So Sybil will change that.
Yeah,
Or you would,
that's
Sybil,
the way
okay.
that I understand it, but I
Okay.
could be wrong.
I just want to be clear. Thank you all so much for your patience.
Thank you.
Okay.
We had just a question about the transportation, and that has been the biggest thing that I've had, several phone calls and sent some money to you over the last little bit, but, that's not in this rule. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, do you want me to speak to that?
Yeah.
We've been talking with Deputy Jones about what that might look like, and further conversation can be coming, but that would be within transportation, not necessarily within the kindergarten rule.
And if I understand correctly, the funding that was provided by the legislature did not include the half-day kindergarten. Right, so they didn't, the mechanism they took into consideration was what it would have cost for full-day kindergarten and not really considered half-day costs. Am I articulating that accurately?
You're muted.
Yeah, we can, if you'd like, just put that on a future agenda. It could go to finance because it's really about financing the half-day transportation option.
And the reason why I'm bringing that up is that that's not happening because they're not targeting funding specifically to that. Am I saying that correctly?
Right, and so it was based off, if it's a full day, then it's based off the full day model, and so that doesn't have that half day funding piece in it for that midday transportation piece, and so yeah, and so that's where I think, and I don't want to be the one that gives you false information, so that would be a Deputy Jones conversation on that.
Yeah, that might be a good question to have, because I'm trying to figure out, you would still fund a student for transportation, and then maybe I don't understand how that's funded, whether they were half day or full day, but maybe it takes extra money for half day.
Right, because what they would have to do is, let's say that they would have maybe 15 kids or 10 kids or whatever that looks like, or even 3 kids in a classroom. If there's 3 kids in a full day classroom that are half day, then you're running a bus for 3 students, which might go all over the LEA. It could, like, or within that district. So if we talk about maybe a San Juan, or we talk about some of those larger geographical areas, then that could be, a lot of funding for that area. And so it's really like a financial, like, how did they word that? And is there different funding, like a base plus or a half, so there's more to it than just us saying provide a half day option. So it's a more in-depth financial conversation.
Okay. Do we know if that's coming up soon in any of those?
It is not coming up in anything, so it is on Deputy Jones's radar. Yet we have been talking about what that might look like. But if you'd like to have it come to a committee, then just board leadership or any board member can add that to an agenda.
And
or we could request, our committee could request that it be added to an agenda too, because if there's 4 people here, or 3 of the 4 of us could ask.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I do know that on Monday we're having like a staff like, I don't know if it's a superintendency meeting specifically on that subject. And so more will be decided following.
So if I may put out some subjects or talking points, whether good or bad or confusing, which it probably will be the latter. In the WPU for this is at 0.55. So what I'm wondering for half days, so as it stands now, that funding is built in already because, and I guess I'm just referencing my area because it's what I know. At that level, they run those kindergarten buses. They pick them up, then they do the afternoon drop off, then they do the afternoon pickup, and then they do the drop off. So the funding's already there, like it's already built in. I know that that's going to, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yes.
I know where I'm going.
Elise.
All I know from my conversation with Deputy Jones and Stallings was that it's a very LEA specific model, right? There are some LEAs that currently are providing that transportation, and then there are other LEAs that do not have the funding to do that. There are other funding sources that we are looking at and providing guidance on, but we are still in the process of working that out to provide. And so that guidance is going out to LEAs saying, here are the options, here's what this looks like. But because there's so many unknowns, I would feel hesitant to provide any statewide statement on transportation at this time.
Okay. Okay, I guess the question would be is if that funding structure is already built in because the half day option is already built into the LEAs. Again, it's not putting
It does not include transportation.
Well, part of it is the mathematical formula for it. And I wish I was there in person so that I could take little manipulatives and move them from where move around the table and show everyone on the table what this looks like. So like the math person in me is like wanting to show this is a picture. So let me maybe talk this through as a picture. So let's say that we had 25 kids in three sessions of kindergarten. So that's 75 kids. And they're getting on buses. So now that might be making one bus route bigger. And so now we need to have an extra driver just in the full day alone, just what that looks like. So, but now if you just take one or two students off of that, now, even though we've increased the number of bus drivers here or there, we have this third option that we have to fund, which may only be a couple of students in there. So because anyways, and I'm not doing a very good job without being able to show on with my manipulatives.
You're doing great. I'm taking
Yeah. And so anyways, before I, just kind of slay this, I really think that we can, and if you'd like, we can meet with Deputy Jones after this meeting, or we can kind of do an update to you, Vice Chair Green and Vice Chair Earl, or whoever that would like to have an update before that agenda item is asked for. You could just ask for it as a committee, as an upcoming agenda item on a committee. We're going to be having that meeting. And then if you have questions that are specific, like help me understand, why it's like this or what that means, then we can make sure those questions are answered and sent back to this committee.
Okay, that would be great. And I'll probably just reach out just so I understand, because I know it's a numbers problem right now. And I haven't done any personal homework on that. So, but it's something on my radar.
It's been a problem for years.
Well, and that can be, we can request a business case for transportation, like a funding request for money for transportation for this as we go into the summer. So just something to keep in mind. An individual board member could just ask for that. It doesn't have to be 3 to do that one. So
what is that asking for?
A business case for funding for transportation for kindergarten, half day kindergarten.
All right, so we're ready for the final motion.
I think so.
Let's do it. The committee approves R277-730 draft 2 as amended on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. Any further discussion? Let's vote. Those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All right. So now we are on to 3.6. And item R2779495, electronic devices in public schools amended.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, Chair Booth, we have Elise that can talk about the rule, and it's going to be followed up with Cassie, and we have Assistant Superintendent Nelson, Rick Gaisford, and let me see who else. Is that it, Elise?
Rick, I think Rick's online too.
And Rick. Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Very good. All right. Elise, Cassie, Darren, and Rick.
Oh, perfect. So glad. Okay. So R2779495 actually came to the board not that long ago for review. So the changes that were made to this rule were in resulting from new legislation this last session. If you recall, there was a bill about non-electronic communication to students and allowing them to get into events or hearing about activities in ways that were not on electronics. And so there are no changes made to the rule until you get to the policy requirements. So what an LEA has to have in their policy about how they handle electronic devices. And so in that, we added the language from the bill, and admittedly, this is very close to the law. So we can reduce this and just cite the law. I think I would prefer that as a rule writer. But this includes all of the language from the law stating that there needs to be a non-electronic notification to the following things, following events, following curriculum, but then also the exception, right? That if there is a one-to-one device being provided by the school or the LEA, that you can then use that provided device to provide that electronic notification or access. So that is the change that we are proposing. And we, again, have amazing staff here to answer questions.
Board members, what comments or questions do you have?
This is an interesting territory that we're in, and I think there is a lot to be said about the way that our governor and a lot of the legislation has gone in regards to this. And I don't know enough to know that, if having read this a few times, I haven't had anything stand out to me, just kind of like what you were saying, Elise, that it's like, it's important to put in what is in the law, but that also looking at these changes that staff made, I can't find anything that to me would need to be amended at this point. But I think this is also a rule that I feel is probably going to be evolving and changing a lot. On that note, I also think that a lot of it is going to come down to the local LEAs and their policies and decisions that they make on their level about devices and such. But that being said, I think there's a lot to be, I think it's great how we're moving forward in this direction as a state and focusing on pulling these devices from students, distracting them from their coursework and classwork.
I think the other thing it does is it on 136, it just prohibits like a school from having to mandate kids have an electronic device, right? They have to be able to do their things in other ways and not just with an electronic device. So I think there's an access issue here that we don't want to be forcing parents to provide technology when they really don't have to, because a school says, oh, you have to, right? That's not the right direction we should head. So I'm actually good with where this landed.
We don't want teachers to say, everyone pull out your phones and look up and, open Canvas and do this thing. Like, that should not be, Yep.
They need to be aware some kids may not have that, nor should they feel compelled or, coerced into having
technology when maybe parents or students aren't ready for it. So I think it's a good way to go. I think you articulated that well. Do you want me to make a motion? I know you guys are disappointed.
Sorry, I have one last favor to ask.
Sorry. Unless someone else has something, I'm ready to make a motion.
I have one last favor to ask.
Oh, yeah.
We do need to give it a category.
Oh, yes.
So
Goodness.
I think maybe Rick has some advice.
It feels like a 1 or 2. Am I right in that?
2 is what I would assume, but
How much oversight do we really have on this? Are we just providing direction? What do you think, Rick?
Yes, we're providing direction. This really does fall to the LEAs to do, but there is accountability for all of the things that are, most of the things that are in here through their applications that they do for E-rate through UEN. And they have to
Yes,
certify
there is an
all
element.
they have to certify all of this back through the to their applications and the forms that they fill out for anything that they might be doing for E-rate to make sure that they meet all the areas that are in this particular rule.
Okay, so it's more of an assurance type of a thing, right? They're providing.
Yes.
Yeah, so I would say it's a 2 then, in my view. So.
I'm not real familiar with these category things, I would have to admit. So whatever you decide, I probably will be fine with.
Okay.
I'm gonna jump in. Sometimes I talk for Rick and sometimes he talks for me. I say 2, category 2.
So it's not, it's not that, just do what you can. There's still some element of oversight.
In many ways,
Yes.
Rick and I are interchangeable.
Nice, 2 it is
My
then.
favorite part of that job.
Twins. Okay, so if you want to add that in. Yeah.
I have one question about, I don't know if this falls in here though. So it says down here on that new edition on prohibition on requiring the use of a privately owned electronic device to complete coursework. If a student also works better with paper, is that accommodation built into this one? Where they can, because a lot of stuff is submitted through Canvas and other similar avenues. Does it say in here, does that fall in this rule?
I don't know. That's what I was just trying to think if it would actually encompass here where it's talking about electronic devices.
Yeah. And if so, yes, Elise.
So it does say in line 90 that an LEA's policy needs to consider academic excellence and what provides that excellence, right? And I would think that would be both in like prohibiting devices, but also in supporting.
It significantly impairs academic excellence. I think we added that.
I think Rick has something as well.
Okay.
I was just going to mention that, the yes, and a lot of things are done electronically on that. What that line really refers to is you can't require a student that they have to do something on their own personal device. Now, they could be using a school device to be able to submit their papers and things like that. That would certainly be relevant. This specifically, when they were at the legislative level, they did not want to get into curriculum and instruction with the use of devices, and that realizing that teachers have put in a lot of effort to move their curriculum to make it very accessible and transparent for everyone. Good teaching would say, if you have a student that needs to do that, you would accommodate that.
Okay. I'm going to make a reference.
Something that, and when we talk to the to district technology leaders, and that can emphasize.
So 90 allows if there is a student that's in, let's say in between homes or things going on that they don't have a Chromebook, say, and all of their home, the only way, I have seen this too, where anyway, the only way to access this is through submitting it through Canvas. Can that student, because of line 90, be able to get, say, the homework printed out for them? And if that's a yes, then I'm wondering where it shows up here in rule that the teacher is aware of that and can accommodate that. So meaning printing out that assignment and sending it home to that student with that student.
It does not. And that was in part, I'm basing this on the discussion that happened at the, in the committee meetings at the legislature. They did not want to go down that. They just felt that would be, I'm trying to think of the right way to really articulate that, but they didn't want to go down that pathway. All the curriculum, of having to make accommodations that way, where everything is there. In the vast majority, well, I shouldn't say the vast majority, but in many of our schools, they provide the devices, and that gives the student the access all the time.
I know that
I can add on to that.
Thank you.
When I was in a district as well, and we had schools just buying digital curriculum and whatnot, we always had the school buy a couple of books as well. So they have all digital curriculum, but just noticing, or noting the fact that not everyone's comfortable with that. There were, some physical books that were sent home as well. And I do know of some instances in schools where parents have said, I don't want my child to be working on an electronic device. And so that means the curriculum and the turning in of curriculum and accommodations have been made in that area. It's not a 504 accommodation because it has nothing to do with their learning. It has something to do with that right of conscience, almost in a way of being able to say, we don't believe in, or this isn't a part of what we want to have come into the home. And so I do know of accommodations that have been made. So if you're hearing about a lack of working together with a student, or those things start to come up, let us know, and let's see what we can do to work with those schools and what it looks like, and then if possible language is needed moving forward. Because as Rick was saying, even Elise was saying that we should be working with students according to what their family believe are happening, but to print out it like say there's a resource and it's like a 30-page resource, maybe they can send home a tablet or something that's not connected to the internet, and maybe that's an option. Does that make sense? So it would be really specific to the context of the LEA, the teacher, the classroom, the student, and the needs of the family as well. So how we would do that in a rule, let's maybe work on that to see what that looks like.
Sure.
Because I understand your concern.
I think it would fall under best practices when it comes to our educator standards, right? It's making those accommodations more so than here, at least. This is specific to technology, which, if we wanted to articulate something, but really it's educator standards, right? That says, what are the needs of my students and how do I best meet those so that they can have academic success that they need.
Well, I think too, if I may reference, there was a middle school, they purchased the one-to-one technology. So the students, I forget if it was school-wide or if it was a specific age group, but they'd sent, the Chromebooks home, and then it kind of surged through the community. The kids went rogue because all of a sudden you have this technology. Well, they brought that back in, and now kids don't take the Chromebooks home. I had worked with a specific student that was in between homes, so homeless, with homework that they needed. They used our computer. If that hadn't have happened, they wouldn't necessarily had access to do their coursework at home, I guess, unless they also went to a different friend, but they were searching out the avenue in which they needed to submit their homework. So I just thought, well, in that case, it would be beneficial to have it printed out and adjust to the needs of the situation. So I was just wondering if
we've heard something. Yeah, we've heard something similar when a family maybe has 2 devices and 5 children. And so what does that look like when they're all needing it at home as well? So I don't know, Rick, Cassie, what are your thoughts on that with the family piece and you being involved in this as well? Cassie?
I think It definitely goes to individualized education as a best practice. I mean, that is built into best practice, and honestly, that would be, I mean, I would consider it unethical of my own teachers to not individualize based on a child's needs. And after COVID, you know, like we made accommodations to make sure that we bent over backwards to make sure everyone had access to online, you know, Chromebooks, whatever they needed. But if the student, we had some kids who could not be on devices because they had problems. So we had to make accommodations for those kids to make sure that they were getting the same quality of education. And that goes to being a good educator and a best practice. And I think that falls back into the realm of, you know, being a good educator. And I do think there's a lot of guidance in that area. I'm not saying it's followed all the time. I'm the one that gets the complaints. I hear the complaints from parents. And so I do know, but that is a different story. It's not, you know, it's not the device situation, I don't think.
And if I might, I think this is Cassie Hayes first. Is this your first time in our committee speaking?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so do you want to just introduce yourself really quick so that I know we've introduced you in the full board, but what your role is at USBE?
Yeah, I'm the started in January as the new parent liaison and engagement person for the state that legislation created last year. And I built and ran a charter school for 9 years. And I also ran an online school for our district for 7 years. I've been in education for 25 years, mostly secondary, but I also did elementary in the online. So I've done a little bit of everything.
Awesome. Yeah. Good to meet you. Oh,
Patty, you're muted.
Yeah, there we go. Cassie is also one of the very few employees at USBE that reports directly to the board. So she is your staff. So interesting all around, and love being able to work with Cassie now. So, and those are things maybe, Cassie, you can look at going forward if any of those complaints or concerns are coming in via that parent liaison role.
Okay, I don't know where, I mean, I was just bringing this up as discussion because I know I guess it just ties in with the use of electronic devices in the learning environment. I'm not sure we need to put anything. Mine was just trying to query
Where that was at.
we have our thumb on situations like that if they needed that accommodation, that they could get that, and being able to tell other parents that might be in that similar situation that there's options available. Anyway, that's all I have.
All right, great. So are we ready to vote on this?
Yeah, I can make a motion.
Thank you.
We need to add the category 1.
Oh, yes, okay. Category 2.
So we have the board amend 277495 draft 1 section 1 to include the following line. This rule R 277495 is categorized as category 2 as described in rule 277111. Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. And now the final motion. Member
Okay, I
Earl?
make a motion that the
We have,
committee.
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Patty, did you need something?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay,
I
the
thought
final
the
motion
motion was going to be to close the meeting. I'm like, no, we have one more agenda item. So it's like,
Yeah. That the committee approves R 277495 draft 1 as amended on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading.
So we have a motion that the committee approve 277495 draft 1 as amended on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. Any discussion? Further questions? Seeing none, let's vote. Those in favor say aye.
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 I think that was everybody. That passes unanimously. All right. Now we have a final agenda item, and it has to do with our committee, Student Success Advisory Committee discussion. I am going to switch over to phone, and so maybe I can ask Vice Chair Green to conduct this discussion. I'm going to listen in so I can start driving up to Salt Lake for the 1 o'clock meeting.
Yes, drive safe. We'll see you soon.
All right, thank you.
I'm like, don't leave at 8, you'll be late.
That's right.
Okay, so we are on discussion item 7. Is that right? All right, so let's open that up for discussion.
Okay, do you want me to kind of, this is the, trying to look at maybe a broader view of student success in general. So, and anyway, I'll just go through kind of my rough ideas here, and then we can, I'd love any feedback. So, create some kind of policy or committee focused on the student success, specifically with around opportunities for all students and merit-based policies. And the merit-based policy to me is an important feature because it doesn't restrict anyone if it's done correctly, right? If it's not done correctly, then it could be problematic. But where it's based on what a student is able to do, or making sure they have access to something so they can able to succeed instead of narrowing it down to only certain kids. The proposal aligns with the board's mission vision, the student success provisions of House Bill 261. That's where the student success language comes from. And then let's see, the proposed committee would, and these are just some ideas, purposes, and duties, and then we can just add or adjust as we want. The proposed committee would provide information and recommendations to the board that drives academic excellence and creates opportunity for students. The proposed committee would evaluate the effectiveness of current initiatives and policies designed to expand opportunity for all students. The proposed committee would identify programs where academic excellence exists within the state and identify contributing factors. The proposed committee would identify education trends lacking sound research and limiting student success for academic success for students. That could also be identified as possible barriers, right? Often we use that term. And then the proposed committee would provide any necessary communication or feedback for the board. And then I have just some suggested compositions. It doesn't have to be any of these. These are just rough ideas, right? Proposed committee would be comprised of individuals at the state, local, or student level who have direct impact on student opportunities and merit-based policies. Possible options for the committee would include Utah State Board of Higher Ed, someone from there, principal superintendent, state board members, legislators, representatives from organizations whose mission is to expand educational opportunities for students and has experience with merit-based policy. And then parents with strong interest in academic excellence, merit-based initiatives, and opportunity for all. Utah students, possibly our parent engagement specialist would be one there, ELL specialist, and then ULEAD director or someone from ULEAD, because this is one of those things they're highly involved in currently, is looking at where we're seeing the successes. Those are my rough ideas. I'd love to hear everybody else's now.
Member Earl?
Yes.
Or Vice Chair Green, if you don't mind. So I like where you were going with this, and I think there's a way for us to still fulfill the goals and mission of this committee while staying compliant within 261 and making sure we're encompassing all students in the way that we serve, but also as representation on the committee. And I did come up with a couple ideas for the naming piece. not sure like what it could be named. I've spent the last few months at work at Salt Lake Community College renaming offices. So I'm open to ideas there. But there were a few student when it comes to the composition of the committee, some ideas for folks that represent different student populations that could be represented on the committee. And a few of them I came up with was multi-language learners, multi-language learners, refugee students, second generation Americans, or first generation students, and then as well as low income. Those were some of the ideas that I had.
Okay, I think those are both two categories that would be wise to include somewhere in there. I had the ELL, but I do think, I mean, that was our specialist, but I think as far as representation, I know the state's seriously looking at some of that immigration, refugee status, the number of individuals coming into the state. Some of our schools are, I can't even remember, I should have wrote the numbers down, but Granite is getting so many students a month, like it's not like 5.
Jordan. Yeah. And
but
I think like having, go ahead. Well, having talked to some of our superintendents, they, you know, like 2 years ago, their greatest need was like mental health. And now my superintendents are saying that, but more so they're talking about multi-language learners and providing resources for students who may be either a refugee or second generation American. And that includes how do we support their families in supporting their students, and how do we support the students as well? So that's kind of where, along the lines of what you were saying, is the increase in that way. So those are some of my ideas that I had.
And I would even argue on that one, how do we support our teachers and the education entities in order to find, right? It is the students, but it also is, you know, if you're getting a classroom where the students that are not speaking English monthly into a school system, right? Like Granite or something. How do you support our educators in helping them be successful?
Yeah.
Right. It's talking about sports and, yeah.
100%. And I also wonder if one of the committee members, a possible idea, if we're just brainstorming here, is administrators and or teachers or parents. I don't know what's right here. There's no bad ideas in a brainstorm. Is administrators, a teacher, or a parent from a Title I school?
Okay.
And then, you know, I think there's a lot to be said about the higher ed piece, and but I obviously everyone's heard me say so much about I am focused on the P20 pipeline and trying to strengthen that. But I don't know if the board of higher ed is going to be helpful. I think almost rather maybe someone from, we have like the PACE program, which is state funded program that we have in a lot of, like we have advisors that are embedded in high schools from the PACE program and different things like that. I just don't, knowing the work of the state higher ed board, I just feel like they're pretty disconnected. I don't know if they'll have a lot of helpful input, but possibly they will. I could be wrong. That's just kind of my thoughts on that, on the higher ed one.
You're wanting to maybe be more specific and I'm just going to give you an example. I talked with some higher ed math educators this week, and their biggest concern is they have students coming in. They said it's 10 times more, and I don't know the time frame. They were going to get me the actual numbers of students who were needing math remediation in the lower, below 100 than they've ever had before. So that to me speaks of not success, right?
Well, I'll have to teach you. I'll have to send you some information about our math program that we just got funded by the legislature at Salt Lake Community College that does that, and they've created it. It's really cool. So I'll have to have you geek out on that. But it's more so folks that are more engaged at a more intimate level with the P20 pipeline rather than at the higher level from the board is kind of what I'm saying. And that could be in a lot of different categories, but I just think that they'll provide a lot more insight and input than someone from the board. So like I said, like a lot of our UC institutions embed advisors into high schools and things like that. Yeah.
So you're saying you're suggesting some people that are in the weeds. They're right. They're not so much the structure at the top.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on like second generation American and or first generation students.
I have not thought what that would look like. Is that different than, and just tell me if I'm second generation versus second generation, how do we measure that and who's making that decision? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so like, I guess it would be something like if your school or your district, your LEA supports majority or large population of second generation Americans and or first generation students or something like that.
Okay.
And then I think Title I kind of encompasses the low income piece. So I'm good there.
I would agree with that. I think that's a good way because that's something we use frequently.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. One other thing. If you can scroll up a little bit, I know that you put something about rural, but I'm wondering. Okay, yeah, that works. And I think that this can be simplified in a way because there's probably a lot of overlap. Like if we have a principal from a Title I school, that kind of covers the other piece. Whereas I just want to make sure rural is also represented, and maybe we need to specifically call that out. I don't know.
Okay, you're saying we want to make sure and of course this is brainstorm still, but yeah, I think we need from both in order to be
I want to
effective.
make sure rural has representation, but I don't know how to do that. And then I was just going to mention also on the name, I know we're over, but I'll just say this before I forget because I've been thinking about it all week. On the name, we just renamed, just as an idea, we just renamed our Office of Diversity, Multicultural Student Affairs. I think it's what it used to be called. I can't remember now. Now the Student Engagement, Experience, and Achievement. So those are some words in there, student success, but it's like achievement, experience, engagement. I don't know. Those are just some of the ideas I have that I think encompasses. It was like a similar, like that office supported a lot of the things that this committee used to do. So that was why I just wanted to give that example.
Okay.
And of course, in higher ed, we had to make it an acronym.
I had the whole backside of a paper written down, a million acronyms, trying to figure out one that didn't sound really dumb.
Yeah, they're calling it SIA. Maybe it's like, hey, we see ya.
SOS, right? That was one. Student opportunity success. I don't know if SOS is the right direction to go, if that gives a negative connotation.
I think that advisory of student success, ASS, that'd be fun, right? I'm joking.
I think I wrote that one up too.
Yeah.
Did you really say that?
I did. I said it. And I was joking. If anyone decides to clip that, they're welcome to, but I was joking.
We got you. And I think what time frame do we have, Patty? Maybe a few more minutes and then.
Yeah,
our committee can go until 12:30. It's 12:04.
It's up to all of you. We have this, and then we have the final agenda item is information for AI. We have that actually kind of written up. We could write it up further and just send it to all of you as a written update instead, if you'd like on that final item.
Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead, spend a couple more minutes and then we'll transition. Go ahead.
I just have one question, which is that, you know, it would be good in this piece to hear from the current committee and see if they have input and guidance. And I know, Jenny, you've met with some of the members of the committee and we talked a little bit about that yesterday, but I think it might be nice to get their input and thoughts on some of this as we craft it, since they've been doing the work. And
Can you, yeah, I think that's a good idea. Patty, can you ask Holly? I think they're meeting either this week or the next.
It's on May 17th, I believe. I can look it up.
Yeah, maybe ask her if she would mind getting some feedback for us.
Yes,
Holly,
that would be great. Yep.
Yeah.
Andrea, will you remind me so we can send that? And hopefully Holly's watching, so.
Let's see. Oh, it's on the 7th. So next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Is their next meeting.
Okay. Okay. And then just if we want to develop out any more of the purposes or duties, or if there's anyone that wants to add anything, this, like I said, this is rough draft. So if there's other components, I don't know, even Cassie, if you have any recommendations on any of this, as far as feedback on, you know, those initiatives that we're seeing, academic success.
I was just gonna say, number one, I think it's really good to try and give students more voice. And, you know, sadly, I think the smallest voice in the whole picture of education is usually the student themselves. And so that I really love. And I do think trying to maybe just make sure that the focus is on helping students succeed versus, you know, we have lots of things that celebrate students who are already succeeding, but trying to have students, you know, create a way for students to try and figure out what is needed to succeed for them. So I do think that that's extremely beneficial.
I love that. And honestly, I think it's super empowering to give students a voice in these. Like, I love how like student body presidents and folks in higher ed always serve on the board of trustees or things like that. So having that student voice, it really helps empower them and it gives us great insight. So that would be something also, I think, to consider.
And I think, you know, like even my position, it's very important to try and include, even though it says parent engagement, which a lot of superintendents have told me they hate that name. But, you know, the kids are part of the family, you know, so it really is the entire family trying to get engaged, not just, you know, and who knows what the parent is, you know, it could be a grandma.
I like what you said, what is needed to succeed for them. You know, over the last 10 years, I've watched, this has happened with a number of scholarships and other things where we've actually reduced and eliminated our merit-based scholarships to where it wasn't on merit anymore. It was on circumstantial, or it was on other things. And I think what it's done is actually weakened the system to where there's not a lot of expectation to shoot for that anybody, right? We don't want anything that, we want something that all students could accomplish, and then providing them, I like what is needed to succeed. Right. So that's something to think about there. We've, like I said, we've eliminated a lot of that. And instead of eliminating that, we should actually be promoting that, but then helping students meet those expectations.
Yeah, it needs to be accessible for all students, but have a structure that, you know, is accessible to them.
Yeah.
That's very, you know, like very, I don't know. I always think that one of the other issues that we have is that, you know, like very clear expectations, because if you know what the expectations are, you can reach for them. But if it's always this weird moving goalpost, it's impossible.
Okay, and I do see a lot of overlap on some of the other things we're doing, so I want to be careful we're not duplicating, but maybe it's a matter of organizing, right? Making it more efficient in the organization so it's more fluid, but I don't know, anything else? Okay.
All right, if we're okay, should we hold that and keep working on it and move on to the next agenda item?
That's me.
That's
All right, come on up.
And while Melanie is sitting down, I just wanted to thank the board yesterday for the approval of the framework. That was so many hours of work across the state. And I just wanted to make sure, and this is kind of personal privilege, thank you to all of the board members for your comments, because those are the exact same ones that we're talking about, and fully aware that it is not perfect and it may have to come back every single month, you know, and so being able to put some sort of securities in place is really helping our LEAs out. So just wanted to thank board members for all of their comments, knowing that we're hoping to be able to address them as we go along, and we know it's not perfect. So Melanie.
And I want to add on to that. Thank you for all the committee member comments. That was really nice to have you all weigh in. And, that was really cool. So we have 5 things to talk about, and I'll just list all 5 of them, and then you can decide which ones you want to do. We are hiring an AI specialist position at USBE, and I can give you some details on that. So that's the first one. The second one is how the policy training videos are being received.
And is that in the field or is that in our department?
In our department.
Okay.
There's a lot of buzz about board member Wood driving the car. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
I haven't seen it.
They're so cute. And also, board member Bogus asked a question for our consideration. And I'll just read the question and then we can decide if we want to talk about it this time. What happens when AI returns information that is not board approved? I'm waiting for a board member Earl to stop writing before I say it.
So those 5.
But there's 2 more.
Okay, go ahead.
UEN has an RFP out for AI solutions.
And what does that mean? They have an RFP out for AI solutions. Solutions to what?
Such as school AI, Skillstruck, walled gardens. And whenever we say walled gardens, we go like this with our hands because that's what Patty taught us. Walled gardens.
Okay. And is that for their resources or is that to be used throughout the state?
Oh, that's a really good question. Those are cooperative contracts.
Okay.
There's going to be a multiple award. So probably I would suspect around 5 to 10 would be approved. So if an LEA wanted to use one of those solutions, they wouldn't have to do their own RFP process.
Okay.
They could just piggyback, and also the state would negotiate the pricing. And what we're hearing, one of the questions that board member Earl asked me yesterday was, what are most LEAs doing? I'd say 5 or 6 of the bigger districts already they've purchased a solution, but most of them are waiting to see what this RFP gives us, what information. And so the hope is that everything is in place so that LEAs can buy things for the 24-25 school year.
And maybe just adding to that, and thank you, Melanie. It is not a requirement. It is not something that the state will go statewide with a solution. It is just that RFP process for procurement and licensing, and to be able to get the best rate. That's it.
Okay, and this is what I learned about technology about a month ago, is that when a district or, in this case, UETN sets up a contract and they have this binding contract that another education entity can often, I don't know what the term is, they can use that, sign on with that contract. I don't remember what the term was.
What education entity would you say?
I don't
Like
know.
not an LEA, like a higher ed?
No, I was thinking even districts are doing that. Right, where they bought technology and then they've set up a contract.
Okay, yeah. The service centers are doing that.
Yeah.
They did that with some of the literacy software.
Is that the same thing happening here, that they were setting up these UETN contracts with AI solutions and then others can join into the contract? I know they're negotiating prices, but is the contract something that, I guess what I'm concerned is that an LEA will not have the expertise or knowledge to get the privacy parameters around some of these high-tech entities?
The privacy parameters we're pretty good with because the data privacy team at USB is very.
Oh, they've been working on it.
Yeah, so that's set. What I don't know is if there's consortium pricing, and I can check this out if you want.
Yeah.
So I know that's what a lot of the service centers did with the literacy software.
Okay.
So I can check on that.
Well, it's not, I don't necessarily need to know that. I just was wondering if they're able to use those contracts is what.
Yeah.
Right, because you can find out the other information. I don't mind knowing, but
okay.
I don't set up the contract, so I don't, do you know what I mean? So, yeah. But it is good to know. Okay. Is that
those are my 5 things. Okay. I mean, our 5 things.
Yeah.
I have 4.
Okay.
Hiring an AI specialist position, how the policy training videos are being received in the department, AKA. Remember what? I
love that.
Board budgets for consideration. What happens when AI returns information that is not board approved, and then walled gardens. Which one am I missing?
AI solutions.
AI solutions.
Yeah, so you got the walled gardens, but they're also doing the AI solutions. They're trying to get contracts in place for those.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Awesome. I love that quick feedback of what we're doing.
Thank you.
I guess you'd want to know if there's any other questions or things that we want you to look into over the month.
Yeah, or if you want more details on these things.
Okay.
I have a question about when you're saying that the cooperative contracts. So there's a lot that I don't understand about this. But if we have cooperative contracts which means that we have multiple LEAs that are funneling into one AI solution.
Not exactly.
Okay.
So sure.
You or Patty could probably do it.
Yeah, I was wondering if we could have Adam Hurd come back and answer that one so that we have the full answer on that, because there's different ways of doing it, whether it's a state contract, whether it's a UETN contract, whether it's a contract USBE houses. And so we can add that. And I'm also thinking, Melanie and Andrea, that we can type this up for our board members, because I just realized we didn't type it up, but we're giving it the report now. But it would be nice for other members who, board members who don't see this, to be able to have this list. But we can invite Adam back next month during this information time to talk about those contracts, or if you would like to give that specifically in an email.
Okay. Are you asking me or are you asking the board members? Everybody. I have done several cooperative contracts with Adam, and so I can tell you, I can give a pretty good idea. If you have really specific questions, I might have to refer them to Adam. But I've done this process quite a few times. The way that you want me to talk about it right now, the way that the contracts. So right now, if a contract is over $40,000, LEAs have to do their own RFP. And that is an arduous process, especially for the smaller LEAs. And so there are times when USBE will do a cooperative contract. And we do all of the vetting. And on this particular contract that UEN's working on, they have representatives from large districts and smaller districts and from charters. So they have a really good representation on this RFP committee. So the only thing, so if this is just a vetting for LEAs. It's a vetting. The two things that we're really worried about is that we want to make sure that these solutions are secure. And so that's one of the things. So we have a lot of cybersecurity people and data privacy people who are also on the UETN team. This is an email I got from Justin, so they're on this. Another thing we're worried about is teaching. Let's see, teaching tools. For example, I've spent some time in Jordan with School AI, and they have a school which is its own walled garden, and then within that school they have classes, and that class has some walled gardens and some ability to say, hey, we're gonna do information. We're just gonna collaborate with this teacher's class. And then we also have groups. For example, a teacher can set up a group so that 5 students are collaborating. So those are the two things we're looking for: security and teacher tools. And so this is just a vetting process. And then we're also going to do pricing, negotiate that.
So under the first security, and that would encompass data privacy too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that's incorporated in that.
Exclamation mark.
That's what I wanted to hear.
The biggest thing that we'll ever do.
It's just not people getting in or getting in the system or whatever. It's actually making sure there's privacy elements to it.
Yes.
Or even the information getting out. I know you're saying the word, we just don't want the, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's the top priority.
Okay. Okay. Good. Anything else?
I guess on that note is where you're saying that you can have multiple schools that are contracted.
This we don't know. The multiple award means that multiple vendors will be. So we're not looking for the best solution. We're looking for 10 solutions. And then I just made up the number 10. And then with those 10 solutions, LEAs can choose from one of those. They'll think, oh, this is probably better for our school size or our community. So that's what the multiple award means. The consortium is the word that's used when there's one contract for several LEAs. And I don't know enough about that. I know that Joe Wright of SCDC has been a leader in that, and I can find out more information from him. He would know that.
Okay. I had something, but it's gone.
I've got the Patty disease. I don't want to stop talking about this.
It's engaging. It's not a disease. It's like a whole nother committee, like success committee. And this was the only hour I've talked about it, just so you know. So I'm good. It was allowed. Okay. All right. And I'm wondering, let's put that down on our what step to bring back and just make sure everything we have in there is correct and get a really complete answer from Adam and UEN on that contract. Did get some information that the LEAs will be able to subscribe to data privacy agreements once they originate at least in one LEA, and School AI and Magic School have already been approved as some of those RFP folks through UEN. So I did get that additional information. So we can come back and provide more updated information specific to either USBE or what that looks like for an LEA or what that looks like statewide for UETN or UEN.
Okay. That's all I have. I know I had a lot yesterday too. I have a lot more, but I don't know that I have any that I don't have the mental capacity right now to do that.
Yeah, if you ever want to chat, when they do happen, just shoot me an email. We can set up a time to talk.
Okay. Great. I think this is good.
Chair Booth or Member Real, do you have any other questions? Anybody online?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you. It's been interesting to listen in on the conversation on AI and also on the committee, success committee.
Okay,
All right.
All right, thank you, thank you.
Okay.
Until next time.
yes. Motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, we'll see you in a minute,
Thank you.
everyone again.
See you all shortly. Bye-bye.
Hi.
IT team, standards and assessment is done. You can stop the recording.
How efficient she is.